Hello, hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are here in Taipei. I am. You're not. It's a lot like Chevy Chase. Chevy Chase's weekend update. I'm Chevy Chase and you're not. I'm in Taipei. You're probably not. Maybe a couple of you. Um that so man, it's a hard week for me. Last week and this week. Kids have hand, foot, and mouth, which is just the worst. It's just the worst. Um, so I wanted to talk about now, obviously, with the fanfic, with prepping for winter, with all sorts of theories. I've spent just an inordinate amount of time like obsessing over George R. R. Martin's sample chapters, just like inordinate, like just insane amount of time. And fundamentally, and I don't know if it's just that if you analyze anything you're going to find so many things wrong, or if there's something particularly wrong about the sample chapters, but man, they and this is an interesting thing, the sample chapters are not canon. Changed my mind. Semi-canon. This is a there's things that are so fundamentally off about each and every one of these sample chapters that I do wonder. Like, I wonder about everything. I wonder, like, how slapped together the end of the Winds of or the end of A Dance with Dragons was. I can't how slapped together these sample chapters are, because there are things that are just really weird about them. Now, to go over like them briefly, like Theon, of course, like, even though we all kind of love the Theon sample chapter because it's Stannis and it's Theon, and there's a real awesome conversation between them. Um, like, honestly, if you were trying to continue, um, I'll get to all of these. Hit differently. I agree. Um, if you were continuing a story, okay, or if you were, if, or any author were continuing a story, like, would you go the way of Theon one? Now, keep in mind that when the Dance of Dragons ended, you have John 12, the wildlings start crossing the wall. 3 days later, you have John 13. They cross the wall and they get the letter about Stannis' death. And in between those chapters is the sacrifice, where Theon is last seen. And then the pink letter has this long description about many days of battle. But even if you didn't even think about the days of battle, going back at the 3 days out to the Crofters village and back would take a week. So no matter what scenario you are dealing with the pink letter, whether it's completely truthful, whether it's a pack of lies or whatever, not only is the Theon chapter off in time, the sacrifice chapter is now off in time. The sacrifice chapter did not take place in between John 12 and John 13. It does not logically make any sense. So you're like it's a very odd temporal, like, shift and destruction of, like, what we know, the Theon chapter. Now, granted, A Feast for Crows, like, begins with a bunch of events that happen, like, mid the Storm of Swords, and A Dance with Dragons, like, goes back, and you've got these two stories going on at the same time. But man, Theon, like, figuring, like, the fact that, like, the fans have sat there and puzzled over the timing of the Theon chapter and what it does to the timeline is a big deal. It's just weird. Like, if you were structuring a story, would you do such an odd thing? Is it intentional? Did George want to mess with us, or is it just like George is just writing and he just can't fit everything timeline wise together and just wasn't thinking about it? Years ago, you asked me, I would have said, "Oh, George totally intended it." But now, like, as I see all these, like, mistakes that are just odd, I lean more towards that. He was just writing, and it doesn't make sense because he was going fast and not thinking about it. Um, so next, you've got the Arianne sample chapters. Again, the timing of these chapters is really weird to figure out None of that really kind of makes sense. Um, it's not really where we've left Doran Martell. Doran Martell is in the last watched in the Watcher chapter, like scheming and thinking about everything and talking about elephants being in lice and knowing that John Con is coming, and yet acts completely out of it and is like, hey, Arianne, you have to be my voice. And also, even if we take all the time stuff, which is just hard to reconcile, Hota going off, Lady Nim trying to make it to King's Landing, all of these things, John Con's landing, which also just timeline wise is weird. The attacking of Storm's End is all weird. Push all the timeline stuff aside. There's some fundamentally weird things with regards to how much Doran Martell trusts Arianne. He goes from not trusting her at all. This is a woman that essentially tried to do a coup, and he was in prison, and all of a sudden he's putting her forward as his voice. You'd think, even if it's part of a big Doran Martell trick, you'd think Arianne would be like, huh, this is weird. This is really weird. This is really weird that I'm in this position. And then even if you take a character like Ilaria, who says like, oh, like war is just, this is horrible. I need to keep my sand stakes safe, and then pops Elias Sand on the trip with him. You'd think that Arianne would have been like, huh, that's really weird that you wanted to keep your sand snakes safe and you wanted to like run from everything, and then you pop your daughter on a dangerous trip through a war zone with me. It's really fundamentally like strange and off. Even the timeline stuff aside, like, yeah, you can kind of go, oh, Doran planned it all, kind of like excuse, but why don't any of the characters catch on to how weird this is? Because it is very weird. Elias Sand is weird. Arianne's position and is just weird. So then Victarion, we get the least of, and I would say that Victarion makes the most sense of all the sample chapters. The one thing that I do think is a bit weird is the Volantene fleet. I don't really understand fundamentally why the Volantene fleet, and all the characters talk like this, why the Volantene fleet should like change the outcome of the Battle of Fire. Like, Barristan is inside Marine, all cooped up. There's a massive army of like 20,000 outside his walls. I don't see how like 400 Volantene ships like changes that dynamic. Do they have special siege engines? Do they have something to like shoot out? Like, is it just heartening or something? But like, I don't really fundamentally understand how those 400 ships and those soldiers changes the equation. Like, Barristan is outnumbered. He's inside Marine. Who cares if the Volantenes show up? Like, the Yunkish already have just a massive number of people. It's just like overwhelming the number of people that the Volantenes have. Also, somebody pointed out to me, like, I don't understand how the Ironborn changed that equation at all, and how anyone could possibly see the Ironborn like changing that equation. Like, like how, even if the Ironborn have 5,000 men with them, which they don't, I mean, but even if they have 5,000 men with them, the Yunkish have like 20,000. It doesn't change anything. Like, it's all kind of weird to me. Again, I don't understand like naval warfare very much, and how naval ships can lay siege to stuff, and why that makes so much of a difference. But it's just kind of all weird. Then we get to Barristan, same issues we're talking with Barristan, but like, what is Barristan's plan? He seems to be leading a sortie. Like, he wants to go out and then come back because of the Pale Mare, but a sortie isn't going to fix the Pale Mare. He would need to destroy all 6 sisters. And he's really focused on Heredity and maybe Wicked Sister. But does he really think that Marcellin's like mother's men and the Starwalt shields and stuff like that are also going to be able to destroy the other six sisters, because he doesn't even have enough armies for that. He would go out the west gate and maybe take out Harridan and Wicked Sister and go back. But even assuming that like each of the other three aren't, well, one is going to the north, so they're not gonna face any trebuchet. But is he really expecting like the Unsullied armies to both, like they're not Unsullied, they're ex-Unsullied, but the freeman armies to take out two trebuchets by themselves? Like, it doesn't fundamentally change the situation. He needs to leave in order to get rid of the trebuchets to stop the Pale Mare. But he's clearly outnumbered, so he's kind of just going to do a sortie. But like, what's the function? He's not going to be able to take out those trebuchets. It's all kind of weird. And then the other thing is like, he spends this time in A Dance of Dragons building up the fact that like Tumco and Larak are his squires and really well trained, and they're the best. In fact, Tumco Low, he says, is the best natural fighter he's ever seen since Jaime Lannister. Okay? And then he has a whole speech about that where he says to them, he sits his lads aside and he tells them about war. Okay? And then he makes Tumco and Larak his standard bearers. Like, a standard bearer isn't fighting. Like, he's holding the flag. Okay, that's what a standard bearer does. It's a very risky position in a war. It's very honorable to be the standard bearer. Okay, but you're taking your best fighter that you have and you're making him the standard bearer. Like, what are you hoping that he's gonna do at this point? Like, yeah, Red Lamb can go around killing people, but Tumco and Larak can't do shit. Like, it's so weird. Like, he built up the fact that like they're great fighters and gives them a speech about what to do in war. He's like, keep moving, everything's gonna feel like shit. And you're like, why are you telling me this? I'm holding the flag. Like I just don't fucking get it. Like, anyway, we get to Tyrion, and Tyrion is just like this long, slow discussion of why the second son should go over, you know, which is how the action doesn't begin, and they haven't come over in Tyrion 2, and he talks about how this should be like something that he needs to do in the last chapter of A Dance with Dragons. And so Tyrion 1 is just there, like them just talking about going over. It's also like all of the time situation with Barristan and Tyrion is really weird. Like, if you look at like what is dawn and when is dawn, and if you look at Barristan 2, just like way too much happens in seconds. Like, it's just very, very odd, the whole description of Barristan 2. But Barristan 1, it's dawn. Tyrion 2, it's dawn. So somehow it's also dawn, like in Barristan 2 and Tyrion 1. Like, you know, like these chapters take place like over the course of 5 minutes. It's very, very odd. Mercy, I suppose Mercy is just odd because you have the epilogue, and then it happens so much later where you've got Swift arriving, and you know, after the death of Kevin and everything, you'd think that Swift wouldn't go, that he'd really be needed in King's Landing, but he jumps on a boat anyway somehow, and we're picking up a month later. So that's all very odd. And then obviously the Forsaken with its very odd back and forth time period, and the Red Wine fleet being so slow, but the Hightower fleet, like the Hightowers being able to go to Lyce and back to get cell sails in time, and building a fleet and everything in time is just, all that timing is all kind of weird. But anyway, that's just fundamentally how like each one of them is really weird. Some are weirder than others. I've been most focused on reading Barristan these days, where I'm just like, what the like Tumco Low, Larak, like, what are you doing making them the fucking, oh, and Elaine, like out of nowhere, this freaking tourney that has absolutely no like hint that something like that would happen, and then everybody arrives so quickly. It's just insane. Anyway, um, the get to this in a second, but yeah, it's just kind of my rant on how all of those. Maybe the volunteers bring food. If they bring food and water, like water is what they need, right? It's just kind of odd. You understand them fine, I'm sure. I mean, I'm making them all work, but it's messy. It's messy. Um, Someone could kill leaders and motivate the armies. The problem is there's like 30. There's like 30 wise masters. I understand that we're only familiar with like a dozen or so, but there's like 30 of them, and so you can't kill them all. You know, it's like Freys. Like everyone's like, oh, there's got to be this big second red wedding, and all the Freys are gonna die. Like you can't kill all the Freys. Like you just can't do it. They're everywhere. They're all over the place. They're in Bravos. They're in Lice. They're in the Vale. There's no way you're killing all the Freys. There's some wife somewhere else, that's married to somebody. How would you introduce the Shrouded Lord? I did a lot of thinking about the Shrouded Lord, and who it could be, and the interesting stories and everything. Like, it's most interesting if he's someone like Gerion Lannister, or that he works for Euron and stuff like that. But also, you kind of realize that there's just no time. There's so little time to get any character from the Sorrows like down to be part of any action, or anybody to do that again. You could conceivably have Dany fly there. Like, I'm just gonna fly to Pentos to talk to Illyrio, and I'm gonna talk to the Shrouded Lord. But why would she do that? You could talk about how, like, you could have another Volantis chapter, with a character like Victarion going back, or Quentyn going back, or using a glass candle or something. And you could try to like have something with the Shrouded Lord coming down on Volantis. But man, George spent a lot of time on the politics of Volantis just to have the Shrouded Lord's like stone men like attack the city, and how they get down there. What would they have, the ships? It's a lot of weird stuff like that. And so, if there were more books and more time, you could deal with it. But honestly, with the Winds of Winter being this situation where I feel, in order for the story to possibly be any close to resolution, you got to get everybody out of Essos, and you got to get everybody south of the Wall before the Winds of Winter ends. And so, like, the Winds of Winter would be a last hurrah for Essos. So you've got to resolve a lot of these stories that are going on in Bravos and Slaver's Bay and Karth and Vastoth Rock and Volantis, and like, is there time to bring the Shrouded Lord down? And would it be just a little weird and crazy? Like, George is allowed to do it because it's George, but like, I think about, like, wouldn't it be crazy if I just had the Shrouded Lord, and the Shrouded Lord's Gerion Lannister, and he just shows up and he just attacks Volantis and takes it over, and you're like, you have this new character that's just nutso going on. It would be a lot. That'd be a lot for a story. So I don't think that the Shrouded Lord will make another appearance. I think it's like a one shot thing now. And that, but if you're gonna do it, you'd have to have like the characters come down for the Volantene situation. Like, you do something with, like, there's a smelly pirate. What was his name? The unbathed pirate. There's a bunch of pirates that they just kind of randomly mention on Dagger Lake that I'm just like, why were these characters introduced? Do we need? Are they gonna? Can they be part of the Volantene plot? Like, what's gonna happen? but I just can't see how anyone could get the sorrows to come back into the story, organically at least. I mean, it could be just a big shock. Um, okay, George, where's Bran? Could Varys be Aegon's mom? Bran's nearly done. Bran just needs to some final editing. It's just one of those chapters that where it's like it's done, but it's like, I really want Bran to be perfect. I'm talking about fan fiction Bran. It's really I think it's really good. I think the story is really fucking good. I love it. I love it. I love it. I just want the language and the writing around Bran to be perfect to give it the feeling of a Bran chapter. I think the events that happen in it are gold. I'm very confident in how cool, like, what we've done with Bran. But I just want the language to be perfect. So like I go back to it and I tinkle with it and I try to like give it a little more Bran feel. And so, but could Varys be Aegon's mom? No, Varys is a dude. Like, if the Varys has been tricking people into thinking that he's castrated, he's definitely a dude. Now, if you want to say that maybe he's Aegon's dad, that's something else. But he's definitely not his mom. Like, why in private would a woman go from a high register voice to a low register voice when Kevin is dying? Right? Like Kevin is sitting there dying, no one's around, and Varys is having his Bond villain moment, and he like drops his voice down to his like regular low voice, and like, why would he do that if he were a woman? Like, that makes no sense. Like, Varys could be Aegon's dad, but it's not Aegon's mom. Like, he's a dude. Varys is a dude with testicles. Okay, he's not even a eunuch. Varys is a dude with testicles. I'm calling it right here. Like, all the eunuch jokes are dumb because Varys has balls. Varys has balls. He made up the story about his balls getting cut off and him hating magic and all of that stuff. But yeah. Do you think that the Valyrian armor on Euron is too overpowered? I thought it was a bit much. I don't know about overpowered because we haven't seen it. Like, we haven't seen it like in action. I mean, kind of funny if it's in action and it just like falls apart and then people are like, "Oh yeah, Valyrian armor sucks." Oh right, yeah, okay. He so but I think what's fun about it is the idea that actually he just like stole it from the red wines, and that like Aaron is like, he really did go to Valyria. Oh my gosh, he's got Valyrian armor. No, the red wines had a fucking Valyrian armor. That's it. Like, that's all it is. Like, I kind of like taking the piss, like just being like, it's not as big of a deal as it is. He just like the red wines had a suit, and so he stole it. And that was it. He didn't freaking go to Valyria. How stupid. And then like, I don't know, like what extra function is it gonna have? I don't know. We'll see. I mean, like I said, Valyrian steel is just some sort of weird like carbon fiber plasticky thing, you know. Preston, when are you swapping One True God's side, the Wheel of Time? The Wheel of Time is coming out September 1st. We'll definitely be talking about it. Our friend Amber covers it, and we're gonna be talking with Amber about Wheel of Time a bit. Apparently, the reports that came out about the first few episodes of Wheel of Time, second season is better than first. That's the word on the street. The word on the street is that second season is an improvement. I can't tell from the sample chapters, is the invasion of the Golden Company going well or not? Because I got the impression Tyrion was duping him into attacking too early. Tyrion was duping him into attacking too early, but the Golden Company's invasion is going fantastically well. Almost like so well, it's almost hard to believe. They landed, and half the Stormlands defected over to them, and the other half like were caught with their pants down, and their castles were immediately taken. So from where we've last left, like Cape Wrath is completely taken. Like the House Merton, the Rain House, Griffin's Roost, like it's all taken. And it's just there's no bad news on Aegon's side. And so the big thing is like, how are they going to take Storm's End? Because Storm's End is impenetrable. Well, it's probably going to happen. And so it's just, but the invasion is happening better than anybody could expect it. I guess all of the Stormland forces were just not expecting it and were gone and didn't put up any fight at all. And so every castle in Cape Wrath has been taken. There's a few that we don't know about. Like, we don't know if Stonehelm has been fallen, but it sounds like Stonehelm would fall. Like, they're all, it's going phenomenally well. And they only have half their force. Like, 5,000 people and all of their elephants are missing. So half their force took the Stormlands. Now, this is fairly, it's not unheard of. I mean, half the North fell to like 17 ironborn, like took half of the North. But so we kind of need the Golden Company to do really well if we're gonna have a second Dance with the Dragons. So it's kind of that way. Tumco Low deserved better. And that's the thing, is we want to see Tumco Low like fight, right? Like, see how awesome Tumco Low is. Just so fucking weird. Barristan spends like these chapters training these dudes. He decides he's been training like in case you don't remember the end of the Dance with Dragons, because this is not a part that people really focus on. But like when Hisdar takes over, like in the background you find out that like Barristan has been taking on trainees. But then when Hisdar takes over, Barristan feels like he's got nothing to do. So he really focuses on like training his boys, who are like sons to him, he describes it, And for the most part, these guys, these pit fighters in training, like they're not that great, with the exception of 3. Tumco Low, Larrick the Lash, and the Red Lamb. And he decides that like there's a few others that are borderline on the bubble, but he doesn't take them in the end. So there's 3 Giscari brothers and some others. So he decides that like they're not ready for battle. And so in the end, we see in Barristan 1 sample chapter that he has chosen 3 boys. He knights them and brings them into battle. Tumco Low, Larrick the Lash, who uses a whip and is crazy with this whip. The Red Lamb, who is not very talented, but he has such fury that it makes up for it. And he just like crushes people with his fury. And Tumco Low, who's like the most insane fighter ever. So his 2 best fighters are clearly Tum and Larrick. And he just gives them a freaking, he makes them banner holders, the standard bearers. So at least he's got Red Lamb. Jeez. What's my favorite soup? I'm preferential to French onion soup myself. Very, very odd question, but different times I like me some different soups. You got to understand that like Western soup and Eastern soup is very different. And so on the Western soup front, I really love like a really good split pea or a really good black bean. Like, I know some people don't like that stuff, but if you have a really good one, you get some good one. You get some good stuff. On the Eastern front, like, I like some pho. Does hot pot count as soup? What is that? What's that all about? But actually, perhaps my favorite soup, and again, not sure if it really counts as soup, but West Africa, they eat a lot of soups where you take fufu, which is this gelatinous grain blob made of yam. I don't mean sweet potato yam like orange yam. I'm talking about like white African yams that are these huge things. Anyway, the women spend all day pounding the fufu. Get these enormous arms from pounding fufu all day. You get the fufu, and they kind of like push it into like making like a Tostitos scoop. You know what I'm talking like, and they like eat their soups this way. And so they have some really fucking good like fish kind of soups, and I don't know if you'd classify them as curries or not, or like groundnut soup, which is, they say groundnut. It's peanut butter, kind of a peanut butter soup. But I would say those West African soups are probably the best. They're fucking delicious. They're delicious. The thing is, like, when how often do you get to go to a West African place as well? Find them. They're interesting stuff. They're good. Apparently, the Augustine Church doctrine held that werewolves were real. They couldn't transform, but instead people could trance and control wolves in their dreams. Wonder if George R. R. Martin ever read that. Huh, that's some interesting stuff. I don't know if he did. But certainly like certainly that era. 400, and you got it perfectly right here. Like 400 AD was this super weird time in Christianity where it was like, I would call it the fanfic era. And so much of what we have today that we think is interesting about Christianity, that like, I'm talking like angels with wings and like going to different sites in the Middle East and being like, oh, this is where Moses like landed with his ark, and this is where Jesus was crucified, and this is where Mary had her first like period. Like all of that shit comes from around 400 AD. Nero is the Antichrist. Like the devil looks like this, and the Antichrist is coming, and all this kind of stuff comes from like Christian tradition in around 400 AD, like 4th century, 400, like 5th century kind of stuff. It's like the Christian fanfic era, because none of this is in the Bible. Zero of this is in the Bible, but there is a Christian fanfic era where everything that we know today, like heaven being floaty clouds with angels and all these sorts of stuff comes from this era. And a lot has to do with the fact that that's when Christianity really booms, and like you get a lot more people with imaginative minds coming up with stories and a lot more, weird analysis and stuff. But I can totally believe it based on that era. For like anytime you're in the Middle East or when you're talking about like Byzantium's like expansion, and like you get this era of like Christian tourists to the Middle East and stuff like this that are just going crazy. But it's just like anytime you see like, oh, this church was built in like 4th century, you're like, 4th century, fucking 4th century, the fanfic era, man. My 2 cents on the fanfic idea. Second half of A Dream of Spring is all Bran chapters, but he is seeing the world through all the people he is controlling. Reads as regular characters, POVs with little hints. That's a fun little idea. One of the things that we're exploring with is the glass candle and various stuff like that. We did the Bravo chapter, but there's a question of whether Samwell is going to appear in any of our other point of view heads. And I think it would be kind of fun if that did happen. But yeah, you could definitely have like hints of Bran being in all of their minds as stuff happens. Yeah. Hash House Harriers. There's hashers everywhere. I was a hasher in Cairo. They're a fun. By the way, if you're anywhere, there's this drinking and running club called the Hash House Harriers where you go running in the desert or the woods or wherever in the city, wherever the environment is, and you go drinking and sing songs. It's a pretty fun club. Um, what do you think of Michael Talk's theory that the wall is full of giant werewoods and others duct taped to them? Huh. I've never heard this one before. Um, I know some people talk about the night, like basing it from a beginning thing. There's some discussion of like the night fort, like was there before the wall. And so the night fort is old, and they kind of this idea that the night fort must have been built around a weirwood, and we've got this like weirwood sprouting in the well and things like this. And so like all of the old castles are built around a weirwood, right? Like, and this seems to be the idea that like that if you have a old god community, they're going to center around a heart tree. You know, the heart tree is going to be the heart of the community. We see this with the wildling villages, and so over time that village is going to grow and become bigger. And they're eventually going to have a castle, and the castle is going to be there next to the heart tree. And so, yeah, it all makes sense that like there was a heart tree where the night fort was, and that all you know all of these sites, at least the old ones, not King's Landing, for example, but all the old ones like were centered around werewoods. But then for the wall, though, you know, you need a line of of villages, like a perfect line, that each have werewoods. The wall is is relatively straight. I don't know if like that would really work out, just in the sense that like you're drawing a line. Would you have a line of werewoods and werewood villages and everything that you know? It does seem that these other stations on the wall were built later, and you know, than the night fort. Like I understand that the night fort could have been centered around a werewood, but I don't know about all the other ones. Because I mean, even if you're going to take something like Hadrian's Wall, like how many villages would Hadrian's Wall cut in half? I don't know. The others are duct taped to them. Is that the idea that the others are the things producing the ice? That doesn't that that kind of fills in the wall again. I mean, I do think there's some sort of like refrigeration unit going on with the wall. Like I do think there's something there. Something, you know, whether people think it's magical or technological, I think there's something underneath the wall that's doing this. I don't know if I would think it's a werewood. Though I don't know. I suppose could be anything. Biomechanical kind of stuff. I don't know. Um Condensing the story into 7 books might be George's biggest problem finishing it. I think writing is just his fundamental problem. I think uh I think George, if he were writing and flowing, he would just like put out another book and be like, you know what, it's going to be an 8-book series. Like I think he would just do that. I think if he had um that idea, um versus like, you know, trying to actually like pare stuff down, because we don't see any evidence that George R. Martin is trying to pare things down or bring things in. I understand that we all kind of logically know that he must have to do this, but we see no evidence of it yet. Not certainly not in Feast and Dance, certainly not in the sample chapters. This idea of like shrinking the story and being more concise and getting back to a Game of Thrones writing style. I don't know. The stinky pirate is the perfume seneschal. This is, by the way, his name is Urho the Unwashed. And so I mean, maybe you could supposedly make Urhu the Unwashed like covered in perfume, but I mean, I think if I were gonna bring him back into the story, I'd be like, okay, he puts on a second persona when he comes down to Volantis to trade, and he covers himself in perfume or something. Because I feel like Urho needs some. George probably just put him in there as world building background, but it'd be fun to have Urho back in. Um, let's go. Wheel of Time. Wheel of Time. Um, have you read Berserk? I have not. Carmine is the huge Berserk fan, and he was pretty devastated when the author died. But he's excited that it's kind of that his friend is trying to finish it. But um, peanut butter soup is just pad thai. No, 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 no. It's very groundnut soup is very very different. Very very different. Um, Pad Thai has like noodles and shit. Like Pad Thai is noodles with like shrimp and like pieces of peanuts, but like there's nothing fundamentally peanut buttery about Pad Thai. Um, but I'm talking it's funny because like groundnut soup. It's gonna be like this is probably like the most beautiful thing you'd ever see. Because first of all, they wouldn't even put all this chicken. Chicken? Who can afford meat? Um, but here's a big ball of fufu. They wouldn't plop it in there. You'd have the fufu off to the side. But nonetheless, this is a weird. This is a picture. But it's very saucy. It's very it's very soupy. It's not pad thai. Pad thai is just noodles. Um, um, I mean, even if you're going with peanut butter soups, I mean, like Chinese hot pot for the most part. Chinese hot pot, not Taiwanese hot pot. Taiwanese for some reason don't do the peanut sauce. They do sesame sauce, but in China, if you get like Sichuan hot pot, for the most part, you take your stuff out and you put on this peanut butter sauce. So it's like a soup, and you pull the stuff out, and then you put this peanut butter sauce on top, and it's pretty delicious. Um, but yeah, a lot, Um, oh, this is a random one. Preston, do you like the Hellraiser movies? Um, uh, I've weirdly seen the Hellraiser movies, and I've had real trouble like trying to make sense of the lore. Like none of it seems to make any sense from movie to movie. And so it just baffles me. I'm just confused on the rules of like what these things are and what the box does. It seems like it changes every movie and makes no sense. So other than the fact that like visually you've got some dude with the pins in the head and you've got a puzzle box, like there doesn't seem to be anything else to it. It just seems to be like really creepy visuals. Um, how will the High Sparrow be dealt with? Well, the I think that one of the clues with the High Sparrow movement is how the last kind of like Magor the Cruel dealt uh, um, with the Sparrow movement, and so we're gonna deal with like big groups of people being burned into submission and that kind of fear. Um, I don't think it'll be as clean as in the show, but I do think that he's going to probably meet some sort of like violent war end. I'm trying to think of because Because what was the name of him? Was it Septon Moon or something? Yeah. And you think of like, so Septon Moon. You kind of look at the like the parallels that George has put in here. Septon Moon. He was a member of the Poor Fellows during the Faith Uprising. He was a bearded brute of a man. This is all like very similar. And Thunderous Voice, Speak for Hours, claimed that the only book he ever read was The Seven Pointed Star. So you're talking about like a religious leader from the poor, uneducated masses who's like tough. And then he let's see, something Moon was a bit of a womanizer and everything. But I want to say he was crowned High Septon in defiance of the High Lickspittle, and then he had thousands of followers, and Moon was approached by one young woman in exchange for a flag and a while the woman was emerged half naked, screaming before the scene. Moon was assassinated, right? But so maybe we'll have some sort of assassination of him or something. But it's gonna be violent and messy is how the High Septon is how the High Sparrow is gonna be dealt with. I don't think it'll be clean. I don't think it'll be him just getting blown up in a sept and everybody being like doop 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 doop. Let's never talk about him again. You know. It reminds me of The Simpsons where they reveal that Principal Skinner is not actually Principal Skinner, and that and then at the end they're just like, and we will never talk about this ever again. So never brought up again. The fact that Principal Skinner is not Principal Skinner. There is no universe where George R. R. Martin names a species the others and makes them purely villainous. I'm with you on that. It's such an ironic name. It's like, so in X-Men comics, the Magneto names his brotherhood the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, and he names them ironically the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. And yes, they are the bad guys. And so like if you're not like reading the story very very closely, and you're just like a little kid being like, oh, it's the X-Men versus the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, then yeah, they're the evil ones. They're the bad guys. They're the Brotherhood of the Evil Mutants. Evil, it's in their name. But like Magneto's being ironic. Like he's like, we're not the, like you think we're the evil ones, so we're just going to name ourselves the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. The others have that kind of name. Like they're literally like they're named the others, which is just like such a ridiculous kind of thing. To make them purely villainous without like some sort of relatable story, because all good villains have like some sort of relatable story to them, right? Is a bit much. You'd think that George would have some interesting background to it, but the thing is that like when I've heard him talk about the others, it's always been contradictory. Like I've been next to a woman who literally asked him, are the others really just pure evil, or is there something more to them? And he says, you're gonna have to keep reading, I can't really answer you. And then other times people are like, what's the best analogy for the others? And he's like, global warming. And you're like, well, there's nothing good about global warming. like that is something that's purely evil, right? Like that nobody wants. So I don't know. It's like can you really have Captain Planet villains, where they're like, yay pollution? Like no one is like yay pollution. Then again, maybe Ramsay is that, Please explain to me how Tywin and Shae slept together. He never exhibited behavior that he was the type of guy to sleep with a sex worker. Was it really just to hurt Tyrion? Oh, Tywin and Shae was really just her Tyrion. Just never made sense to me. Thanks for everything, Preston. I think the implication here, and granted, obviously it was for shock value. Like a lot of people talk like in late seasons of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, I would say that one of the big criticisms that people had is that Joss Whedon would essentially just say, like, oh, well, I've established one character one way for many, many years, and now it's going to be really shocking when they do the exact opposite. You know, I'm going to establish, like, uh, Buffy's watcher, Giles, as, like, this really, like, good person, and then I'm going to have to do something crazy evil and shock everybody. And you're like, but that's completely out of character. Shock! You know? So you're right that it, like, yes, it is established as a shock like that. But I think it is fitting. It's fitting in the sense that the guy is just like, he is the biggest freaking hypocrite, is the idea. It is that he is the biggest hypocrite that you can have in the world, and that he is just a dick like that. And you find that in the real world all the time. All the time. You will have a boss at some point who wants you to be on time and wants you to never leave early and wants you to, you know, but they themselves, you know, show up late and leave early all the time. Like you will have that at some point. You will have like, you know, you will have a significant other that is so jealous anytime you talk to anyone, but then they go and flirt with people constantly. Like you will have that. You'll run into this hypocrisy in life with people, where people will pretend to be one way and have a certain aspect, you know, this outward personality, and then be the exact opposite. And it's very fitting to Tywin. So I think it was a great reveal that Tywin is that much of a piece of shit, that he is that big of a hypocrite, that he hates Tyrion because Tyrion is exactly him. The do what I say, not what I do kind of aspect of parenting. Because what Tywin hates about Tyrion is that Tyrion is just a physically ugly version of him. And like every aspect of Tyrion's personality is Tywin. And that the real reason he hates Tyrion is not because he's a dwarf. The real reason he hates Tyrion is because Tyrion is him and he hates himself. And so, yeah, it was definitely set up to be a shock. There's no clues that Tywin's behavior is that way until it's shown. And then once it's revealed, it's the most fitting thing, you know, that he is just that much of a freaking hypocrite, you know. I mean, there was some foreshadowing of it, like the tunnel to Shataya's brothel was foreshadowing, because they say, "Oh, this was built by a previous hand." Oh, really? Okay. And he uses this tunnel to go to Shataya's brothel. He doesn't realize that that tunnel was built by Tywin, you know. The wall is maintained by George R. Martin's lazy ass. Which point of view have you not tackled yet? I have not researched Davos very well. If we're talking about point of views that are there, if we're talking about like point of views for the fanfic and stuff, you know, where I haven't put very much thought into it, it's again kind of like you know, we haven't really started on like Davos, Asha, Theon, Melisandre, or continuing on with Aeron or with Arya. Or and Cersei too. I mean, I'm putting some thought into Cersei, and some thought into Jaime and Brienne, but like I've put very little thought into where Arya would go next, or where what Davos and Theon and Asha and Melisandre are doing. That's you know, that's kind of a mystery to me. You know, because it's like it's begin with the logistics of it all, and then I realized the beginning of this stream was just me bitching about logistics. Like George just wrote without even thinking about all of these things that don't make any sense, timeline wise, and just like like Why would you take your best fighter and make him a standard bearer? I don't know. But we'll get to it eventually. Um, George R. Martin writes the same porn scene a million times. That's a creepy thought. Like, now you realize he's just sitting in front of his like computer and he reads what he's written and he gets turned on and he and he goes and he deals with his pink dread and then he's exhausted and doesn't want to write anymore. Next day, because he repeats the process. Weren't blocks of ice used to build the wall? Were they? We don't really know. I think there might be some legends that like giants helped like bring in big blocks of ice, but we hear about the wall like resealing, like people digging a hole and then it's sealing in. Um, obviously a real piece of ice like that would sublimate. Uh, like glaciers exist because of a slow process of like melting and packing of snow and it like going in a cycle. That would flatten out if the wall were the same. It would flatten out. You can't, if you just have this like, I mean, our prologue dealt with this issue a lot, talked about this. But yeah, if you have an ice wall, it's gonna freaking sublimate and or flatten out if there's some sort of cycle like a glacier. It's just so it's that's just there's no I don't know. There's no logical way to justify the wall. What if the perfume seneschal is a corpse embalmed in perfume? I mean, I suppose Aemon. Saying Aemon is going to be a steward, and then he would be the embalmed in perfume, but he's embalmed in rum right now. So someone will have to take him out and put him into perfume. But let's see. What is perfume usually made of? Flowers, grasses, spices, alcohol, petrochemicals, resin. I don't know if like you could preserve something in what to avoid. Maybe, I don't know. Hmm. Hmm. Perfume seneschal. I mean, do you think the perfume seneschal is actually just like a J.J. Abrams mystery box? Like he had fucking no clue. Like the lightsaber story from from Force Awakens and all the different things like who Rey's parents are and stuff like that. He's just like mystery box. I don't know. I'll come up with something brilliant later. Here you go, Ryan Johnson. Ryan Johnson's like, fuck this. Throw it on the ground. Throw that mystery box on the ground. um, keep on being awesome, PJ. Tyrion chapter was dope. Thank you. Modern synthesis. That's very nice. Very nice of you. Thank you. That was one of those ones where it's like released and I'm just like nervous about it. Like, so much work. And I just didn't feel confident. Like when we finished so my favorite of the fanfics are like are prologue, Elaine, and Bravo. And like when those chapters were finished, I'm just like, wow, this is fucking gold. This is like I'm like very confident about like the chapters. And there's various reasons for that. Is it like I think it might. I mean, one is I just really like the story of where they went and but also I love a good ending, and people liked the ending to the Tyrion fanfic chapter, but I think I just love the punch of Elaine and the prologue and Bravo better. Um, um, John Aaron, I don't know what discussions I'm getting in the middle of. John Aaron had his wife in King's Landing and would have had sex with her. I think so. I mean, obviously, Lysa didn't like having sex with gross John Aaron. She wanted some hot little finger, some hot little finger. Poor Lysa. Um, Thoughts on possible Prigozhin death by Putin? Is this a possible thing? Like the dude was clearly murdered. The dude was clearly murdered. Um, this isn't even like the funny thing about like I'm so not into conspiracies, right? But with Russia, it's so obvious and clumsy where you're just like, oh really, plane crash, was it really? Like, of course the guy was murdered. Um, but look, they moved all the Wagner forces away from the front. They were dissolving them, so there's no like structure anymore. And then the guy dies on a plane crash after his like attempted coup. He should have gone through with his coup essentially. Um, that's it. But yeah, he was definitely murdered. Now things are. By the way, I don't know how much people pay attention to Ukraine, but Ukraine is they recently like punctured a hole through the Russian lines in the south, so we're gonna see some movement there. The Ukrainians are slowly doing better. I mean, obviously, like from the beginning, I've always said that Ukraine's going to win, but it's just I don't know if it's going to be a year or 10 years, but it's they'll win, they'll win. But man, Putin just freaking murdered this guy so obviously. Um, let's see. Oh, do you think that the High Septon learned from Osney that he works for Littlefinger? He should have. Osney should have told everything. It's funny though because he the High Sparrow does seem to fall for the fact that like she says that she didn't want to kill the High Septon, and that was a lover like saying weird things. Um, so I mean, Osney should have sang everything to everybody, logically speaking, but obviously, like the right information, the perfect amount of information to allow Cersei to survive this all is gonna like come out somehow slip through. Um, but you are right that logically speaking, that should have come out. Interestingly enough, is the Kettle Blacks being Littlefinger's men has played no role in the story so far, none. Like they didn't do anything for Littlefinger. Um, Maybe they will later, but Littlefinger then questions whether he even has control over them anymore. But there's not a single action that the three sons do. The father, yes, but there's no actions that any of the three sons do that play into Littlefinger's hand. There's no like secrets. Like it's just he just Littlefinger at one point says, three perfectly placed knives. For what, Littlefinger? For what? They haven't done anything. They're getting sent to the wall and tortured. It's like what perfectly placed to do what? What did you do? Nothing. They've done nothing. It's such a weird thing. It's a really weird aspect of the story when Littlefinger is like, the genius of having the three Kettle Black brothers there. Yeah, what have you done? You've done nothing. Nothing. But it's an interesting point. It's an interesting idea, like what that's going to be. Could the fight at the fist be Bloodraven's false flag? I think Joffrey Flowers and whoever it was killed. That killed Riker and attacks Mormont was. I think that the idea is that I think whoever is controlling the others at the wall, and I do think it's either Bloodraven or time traveling Bran, but whoever is controlling the others at the wall, the two that wake up and kill people that go for Mormont and that they were trying to take out smart characters, and they were trying to like have Jon, Jon saving Mormont obviously like befriends, like endears Jon to him, and and it causes Mormont to want to do the Great Ranging, and the Great Ranging, of course, like has them all go to the Fist of the First Men and get freaking slaughtered and all sorts of stuff. So, I don't know if it's like, yeah, I think that was all planned. That, because obviously, like the Jon loses time, and the werewolf, the dire wolf, like, wakes Jon up and pulls him up there just so he can save Mormont in the nick of time. Like, it's all so contrived that I think it's, yeah, some big plan by Bloodraven or time traveling Bran to do that. And so why would you do it? Well, yeah, you wanted the Night's Watch to get weakened, for a purpose, and I think it's time traveling Bran. I think that, like, fundamentally, like, he wanted Jon to rise to Lord Commander. Like, there's so many supernatural events that lead to Jon becoming Lord Commander that it's like so ridiculously supernatural and contrived that it had to be a plan. And I think the plan is time traveling Bran's. Because you go back, this is my whole Night's Watch series, but like, Jon illogically wants to join the Night's Watch. He's only able to join the Night's Watch because of Mama Direwolf. Because otherwise, without Mama Direwolf, Ned doesn't march south, and if Ned doesn't march south, there's no reason to put Jon in the Night's Watch. Because the whole reason that Jon is put into the Night's Watch is because Catelyn doesn't want him around without Ned. So Jon goes to the Night's Watch. Bum, bum, bum. Hello. How are you?
Everything's time traveling Bran with you. Everything.
I know. But without Mama Direwolf, Jon doesn't join the Night's Watch, and then without the finding the two others in a Weirwood circle and having them brought back, and then having Jon rage out illogically against Alistair Thorne, and then be put into his cell, and then lose time, and then have his direwolf like bring him up to save Mormont, to then have him get the sword and become like his boy, and then have Mormont like want to do a great ranging. Yeah, it's all part of the plan to make Jon Lord Commander. Get rid of Mormont. How you doing, Carmine?
I'm all right. This guy, Kyle's asking me a question that's triggering me.
What's Carantos?
So, you don't know, when's the last time you watched Destiny? Or tuned into a stream?
The last time I watched Destiny was watching your stream with him.
So Coantros is another orbiter who is incredibly annoying. The guy's from like the Middle East. So he just throws the N-word around all the time. He's incredibly obnoxious. Basically, he watched Boys in the Hood one time and made that his entire personality. Like, he's a wannabe gangster, idiot, moron who is just insufferable. So every time he comes on, the stream is brought to a halt because you know how Destiny is really nice and charitable, and yeah.
Yeah, it's like anywhere. It's funny when you get like, obviously the N-word has very specific American meaning, and so I find when anybody else uses it outside of America, they're going to be using it wrong. Like, it's not you don't understand. You don't understand the context of what it means in our society. You can't just throw it around, It's
Someone made a very good point. Do you remember Jamie Kennedy?
yeah.
Like, Cointreau is basically the Arab version of Jamie Kennedy in every movie Jamie Kennedy ever does where he tries to be a gangster. That's basically who he is. It's just insufferable as fuck.
But doesn't he also like Jamie Kennedy? He tries to be a wannabe gangster, but then is also like a baby at the same time.
That's just that there. Yes. No, I know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
That's
Okay.
basically Cointreau's.
All right.
By the
All right.
way, Destiny was having some tax issues that I was wondering if you could probably help him out on. Good way to get back on the stream.
Oh, tax issues? I don't know. I don't know
Yeah,
that.
apparently, yeah, you do. What are you talking about?
I do my
You
own
know about that.
taxes. That's it.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, I mean, he has a lot more money than me, so he's gonna have a lot more tax problems. Probably gonna be complicated.
Next time, if he does a Game of Thrones thing, I'll hit you up, and hopefully you're online, because
Yeah,
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 I could have used you
yeah.
on
For
that
those
one.
that aren't watching, uh, Carmine was chatting in a Discord chat room with the YouTuber Mauler, and so he and Mauler went on
No, no,
Destiny's
no, no, no,
stream.
that's not correct. What happened
No.
was, by chance, I happened to catch him live. I never watch anybody live because I never catch him live. By chance, I just it got recommended to me on the side, so I clicked on it. He was live, and within 3 minutes of me watching, he goes from talking about the Republican debate to Game of Thrones, and I'm like, oh, cool. So I hit in the YouTube chat. I'm like, get me in here. Let's have this conversation. And he called my name. I joined the Discord, and he brought me in. But then
Yeah,
fucking Mauler joins, and I have no issue with Mauler, but I would just wish I had a more one-on-one time with
yeah, yeah,
Destiny.
yeah, yeah. Because I mean, obviously, like you're gonna know more, and that's the thing is you kept bringing up. You're like, well, actually, and you had like history stuff on like all the interesting stuff from the Dragon book.
Mhm.
Uh, and yeah, you kept getting cut off.
It's the reason, like, I will admit someone called it out. I was a little nervous, and the one thing I always do whenever I get on, whether it's with you or a new guy or Destiny, is like I don't want to challenge people too much because I don't want to be a little too
Mm.
antagonistic. Plus, I don't want to interrupt because I feel like a
Right. So
douche.
so there is this moment during the stream where both Destiny and Mahler are talking about how Game of Thrones should have ended with Jon having a showdown like with the Night King.
Mm,
And I was like, oh my god, like no, that's not how it should have ended. Like
no.
George would have never had that. Um like that's not where the story should have gone. But they're all like, that's what needed to happen. Like them to have a freaking boss battle. It's like, no, no,
No.
no. I mean, I'm not saying that Arya stabbing the Night's King was the right way to go, but John having a boss battle with him was also not the way to go. So
Like I said, because people got on my case, like, you should have interjected here, you should have interjected. I didn't. It was my first time on there. I didn't want to be a jerk and just like
yeah,
interrupt.
you also it's
Because
his stream. You don't want to go into in his house and insult and you know insult his wife as they say, you know, or
yeah, like
yeah.
someone's like, you not wanting to be someone messaged me privately, you not wanting to be antagonistic. What the hell is this? In a professional setting, no, I don't. Privately, of course, I'm an asshole.
Well,
But
yeah,
in a
yeah,
professional setting, no, yeah, try to be very,
yeah. Tywin Shae, the Lord doth protest too much. It's true. We're talking about how like Tywin like it's not real. Like Tywin getting with Shae does seem out of character, and it's like yeah, it's supposed to because he's a big freaking hypocrite. And
Actually, I think we discussed this briefly like a long time ago on stream, but the Tywin Shae thing, the person I've been listening to the stream, I've been playing CK2 and listening to the stream, but uh, the Tywin Shae thing makes a lot of sense to me
mm,
as someone who's like been dating and well into my 30s. Well, not well into, I'm just turned 31, but do you mind if I give my take on that?
sure, sure.
It's incredible, like the Tywin Shae thing. Well, Tywin being a piece of shit and doing he didn't. Tywin didn't fuck Shae as like a fuck you to Tyrion. He did it because she's a whore and it doesn't matter. She doesn't matter in any capacity. But Shae betraying Tyrion like that makes a lot of sense if you've dated petty, awful women before in your life, because Tyrion did a lot for her, and some
Right.
men will
But
tell you you can do everything right and still get fucked over. That's probably by the woman you love. That's probably the most realistic thing in Ice and Fire is doing everything correct, trying to look out for someone,
Mm-hmm.
and still they fuck you over.
Right. You know, she's a purely self-interested person whose job is
Hmm.
to pretend. You know, like, and he was fooled, hook, line, and sinker.
Well. We're talking about. I think the person who originally made this comment. I think he was talking about the show because in the show, Shae gives more of a.
Ah,
Shae gives more. Shae is makes it seem like she's really in love with Tyrion, whereas in the books, I never really got that feeling.
yeah. The
So
show Shay is given all of these scenes where she cares about Sansa and these scenes where
right,
she's jealous of like Tyrion's actions, and you feel like
care
they're
about Sansa. Shae goes, "I love that girl." Why?
yeah, yeah.
Why? Why do you love that girl with your accent? Why? Whatever. But no, this is a very realistic thing. I've come to the realization that no matter how much you love someone, that won't stop them from fucking you over. And someone in the chat just said, "Well, what choice did Shay have?" True. True. What choice did Shay have? Like, how could she refuse?
especially
Exactly.
especially also your I mean there's a lot of questions about like was Tywin banging Shay for a long time, like did when Braun found Shay did he take her from Tywin? There's those questions and we'll never know the answer, but even assuming that they're a fresh hookup from Shay's perspective, Tyrion's getting sent to the wall or dying, like why wouldn't I like attach myself to a new to a
Well,
new
once again, in the books, that makes a lot of sense. In the
yeah
show, they put her on a boat and gave her like enough jewels and money to live her life out in Essos. She
yeah
chose to come back and
yeah
testify against them. So I'm talking about show Shay.
yeah
Book Shay,
Shoshay
no.
Shoshay doesn't make any sense. Shoshay doesn't make any sense at all. Okay, Shoshay. I know that they all loved the actor, um, and she did what she could to make Shay interesting, um, but yeah, her motivations in the show made no sense at all.
No, that made no sense. I expected Tyrion to have some of the. We watched Kenobi together. You know how at one point Obi-Wan sees Anakin off in the distance? Like, I expected
Yeah.
Tyrion to have visions like that of Shae, and she was on set for season 5 for some reason, but
Hmm.
never shows up as like Vision. Because remember,
Yeah.
Tyrion kills
Yeah.
her season 4 end. So
Yeah. 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 They could have. They could have. I mean, you know, she she probably would have done it. They just didn't. They didn't have anything. I guess have we have had in the show? Do we ever see like ghosts of people in people's heads?
I want to say yes, but fuck, I can't remember off the top of my head. Maybe one time. Well, Danny sees the vision of Khal Drogo and their son, but
Yeah, there's
does that
that.
even does that count?
Yeah.
She's not seeing it because of trauma. She's seeing it because of the warlocks
Yeah,
bullshit.
because of the
So does
warlocks.
that
I'm just
really?
trying to think like any other time where you kind of like see a messy ghost of someone at the distance, and then they kind of shake their head and it's something else. I don't know. I don't think it's ever done. I mean,
You would
it's
think that John would see Egret like that, but
right.
no.
Well, we were talking about like if there was a Jon Snow series, you definitely do that. You definitely have Egret return in some capacity. um, since you missed my super chat on the Ironborn Shanty stream, how did you and Carmine end up collaborating? I was a fan of each of you individually, so I was super excited to see you start doing stuff together. Um, way back,
You
close
really want
to.
to go into this
I
because
mean, it'll be
I
very
actually kind of
brief,
answered
but
him.
like
All right.
very briefly, like when Carmine, our channels were both relatively new. Um, uh, I had some people try to shut down my channel um, by like copyright striking me, and
By
I was like
convincing other people to copyright strike you, they
convincing
couldn't do it
other people. You're
themselves.
right. It's like
Those pussies.
yeah, you're right. It's sort of like the cowardice of as I say, it's the cowardice of doxing. You know, it's like I'm not gonna kill you. I'm a coward, but I'm gonna send an address out there to hope that somebody else will kill you.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, convincing other people to copyright strike my channel. So my channel was shut down for a bit while I worked with YouTube on trying to get it back, and I was just like flipping out, stressing out, and Carmine was just like curious and was just like, dude, what happened? Like, because he was you were worried that this sort of thing could happen to your channel. You were worried about that. You were interested in the drama of the community. You were like, what the fuck? What's going on with you? And he calls me up, and I don't know. We just had a long conversation about stuff, and we just started chatting a bit. And then eventually, I don't know. When did we start doing a podcast? We just started.
I just got the idea and I just hit you up. I should
Yeah,
probably add more a bit more context, not about what happened, but about my mindset. You're right that like it could happen to me, but at the same time, and this is just me being a shithead. When was that? What, 2015?
yeah, something like that.
I was 23 years old. I'm 31 now. I like to think that at 23, I was a different person than I am now. I hope I'm a better person now, more mature. You would know. You've known me for a long time. But back in 2015, I was a dumbass shithead who didn't like anybody. At one point, you know how much I love Phil, right?
Yeah, yeah,
I thought Phil was annoying. I thought you were annoying. But even my feelings towards you or Phil or anybody else, number one, as much as I
yeah,
dislike this person, I don't want their channel taken down. I've always
yeah,
ripped on Emergency Awesome. I don't want him taken off YouTube. So I hit you up. I got to know you. You're a cool guy, and there it is. Same with Phil. I thought Phil was annoying. I got to know Phil, talked to him privately. I started to
yeah.
love the fuck out of him.
But
So.
there is this weird thing of like well, there is this like weird connection of like when you know how hard a channel is and how much passion um and energy and everything you put into it and how important it is, you'd never try to like do that to somebody else, or like you'd never try to bring somebody else's channel down, even if you hated
Wait.
them. You'd just be like, nah, I'd
No, of
never try.
course not. We all it's like living in a fucking apartment building. I would never go out of my way as much as I hate my
Right.
fucking neighbor. I would never go out of my way to get that asshole uh taken off kicked out of the building. Also, Phil, I don't Phil message in the stream. Stream chat. He told me never to live stream ever. Dude, I think you would do so much I think you would like do well if you had like normal videos where it wasn't live stream, but you're a live stream entertainer and you're probably the best entertainer on YouTube. So
Yeah,
live stream
yeah.
away.
But there is just something weird about like even if you hate it, like say you were two like painters, like, and you hated each other. Could you ever imagine like one painter like going to another painter's house and like trying to destroy their art, or like
Mhm.
like I just couldn't imagine that, like them like breaking in and trying to destroy somebody else's art. Like they just wouldn't do that. It's kind of maybe you could you'd be interested in like trying to get somebody to paint another painting differently, but like you'd never go in and be like, no, I'm just going to destroy you. I'm going to
And you're
um
also very like gracious and nice, by the way, by not agreeing with me that I was a shithead back in the day. I was such a shithead, and I like I said to reiterate this, like I love Phil, and of course I love Preston, but like I was that type of person where if I don't like you, I don't like you, and then I guess if I talk to you and then you're cool, I guess I like you. I don't know, like that's so dumb. That's such a childish thing, but that's how I was, and yeah, I've grown out of that. So. Ugh.
uh, um I think Garrus Drinkwater could be Gerion Lannister or his son. He's described very similarly. It accelerate the dance if I'm right. um so the thing is that like Drink has clearly known Quentin for many years. Even though Cletus is Quentin's best friend, um, Garrus has always been the orbit. So the thing is like Quentin has known this guy for like good 10 years. If Gary and Lannister were hanging out in Ironwood in the middle of Dorne, like you think somebody would like, it would come up and someone would have noticed. And now, don't get me wrong, like there are similarities between the characters, but there's just similarities between a lot of George R. R. Martin characters. Like Garrus Drinkwater is just one of those shoulder puncher, good time, nickname bestower, kind of characters. He's not even that different from like he's not even that different from Robert. But there's always these like full of life characters that are trying to have a good time and they're fun, and Garrus is one of them, and Gerion sounds like he was one of them too. But yeah, unfortunately, like logistically though, I just couldn't see them somehow being the same character. Um, but yes, it would certainly help out in bringing the story. Um, the if the story is really a post-apocalyptic one, then wouldn't Littlefinger have a jetpack make perfect sense? Yes, it would. Um, there is yeah, I mean, this is a big thing about like George's writing, is that he often writes like in a kind of post-apocalyptic or a civilization in decline sense, where you're kind of like finding old technology and knowledge that had been lost before, that was more advanced. And so this is certainly the case, even if you don't believe it's sci-fi in any sense and that it's still fantasy. It's still fundamentally that. Like, we know that the past in Ice and Fire was technologically more advanced than the present. Um, they built Storm's End. They built the Wall. They built the Eyrie. They can't do that anymore. They had Valyrian steel. They could telepathically control dragons and whatever. They don't. No, nobody can do that anymore. Now that's quite unlike our world today, where there's very little in the past. There's a handful of cases here and there, but there's very little in the past that we don't know how to do today. We are technologically more advanced than we were 1,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago. So, but yeah, Littlefinger having a jetpack, yes, I know, I understand it's funny, but glass candles, are an example of what kind of technology were they using before and what we don't have. Is Judge and Paste a grisly reference to the Christ Eucharist? I think probably, yeah. Well, yes, it is. It absolutely is. um, Carmine, did you ever have to be made to go to church as a good Brazilian Catholic?
I probably did, but I can't remember. It's been so long. Not that often. I would doubt that. Maybe once or twice.
Yeah. So, especially in Catholicism, there's this Eucharist, blood of Christ thing, where you you eat. So there's this wafer that is transubstantiated, like Christ is transubstantiated into the wafer. It's not symbolically Christ. It becomes Christ. You are eating the body of Christ and drinking his blood, and not in a metaphorical sense, in a very literal sense. The transubstantiation. Um, and so everybody's like, well, isn't that cannibalism? Well, yes, 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 it would be. And it's to an outsider, it must be very creepy to be sitting there drinking Christ's blood and to be eating Christ's flesh in order to sort of connect with God. And so the same sort of thing is happening, of course, with Bran. He is eating the weirwood paste, and whether it's Jojen or not, he thinks it looks like blood, and he is connecting with the god, the old gods, the weirwood net, the godhood, by eating the body of the weirwood, or eating the body of it to connect with it. It is yes, it is, of course, a parallel to the Eucharist, Catholic ceremony of like drinking blood and eating the body of Christ. Um, you know, it's that's all there. And I mean, I think I've been through the scene before, but it's also but it's very it's I mean, there's a lot of parallels to Catholicism there. Like George R. R. Martin was really traumatized by his Catholic upbringing. Never got over it, even though he became an atheist by like 18. But it never seemed to it still affects him today, it seems. Um, Why did Robert want Robin to be Tywin's ward? Sweet Robin. Robin is his name in the show. His name is Robert in the book as well. Ah, hello, Phil. How are you?
Can you guys hear me?
I can. What's been
I'm
happening?
I'm doing well. I had to connect when you started talking about eating the body of Christ.
that's the best, right? The best.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like a cracker. As a Jew, I always wanted to know what that cracker tastes like. But the blood thing is similar, with the wine and the blood and that kind of stuff.
Now, were you raised very Jewish or every once in a while temple? Did you go to camp?
I had a sort of weird upbringing where I had an even split. I was raised half of it going to Hebrew school, Jew camp, and all the like. But then my father's side, who I didn't really here's like way too much drama all in one sentence.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
who I didn't really know was my father, but I'd spend a lot of time with his side of the family, was big time Italian, like as Italian as you can get, and very Catholic. And I celebrated. So I did go to church as well. I went to church around the holidays of Easter and Christmas, and then I went to temple as well.
It's amazing how many cashews I know. There's a lot of cashews out there, where they tell me this story about being half Catholic, half Jewish, and like the
Yep.
two traditions like coming together. But
Yeah.
no, that's interesting that you were exposed to both.
Yeah, I mean, really, it was all about as much food as I could get and presents as a kid. I mean, that's all I sort of conceptualized when it came down to it. But yeah, it was fun. It was like a lot of stuff in that context. It was fun to just sort of surf the highlights of both. But I was bar mitzvahed, and I went
Hmm.
through all of that, and I actually still remember the
You go to
Haftorah.
birthright? Did you do birthright?
Yeah, I did all. Oh no, I didn't get to go there though. No, I did.
Okay.
I didn't book it. I didn't book it. I could have, but I was too busy smoking weed and taking mushrooms and doing stupid
That's
stuff when I
like
shouldn't
that's
have been doing.
like this is a story I will have to tell at some point, but I did birthright. And it's a
Really?
yeah, it's a long, long story. Maybe I should dedicate a whole stream to like my birthright Israel trip. But like
I will be
it
watching,
yeah, yeah, I know.
living vicariously through your journeys.
It's I mean, you and I are of an age, um, and we're kind of on the cusp of like them making like really specialized trips that are like super
Yep.
fun versus like the kind of standard trip that I don't know if you would have gotten a standard trip or a super fun trip or whatever, because now they have trips that are like, oh, are you a lesbian woman? We have a bus of lesbian women, and you're like, okay, do you want no mention of religion at all? Like, and you just want to go hiking? We got that trip for you. Like, okay,
Yay!
yeah,
Atheism trip! Yay!
yeah. My trip was
Were you
one.
working instead? Did they put you to work? You had
No,
to
no, no,
join the
no.
Israeli army.
Oh God, there's so the propaganda. The
Oh,
propaganda on my trip was pretty intense. Because I've known people that are like, I didn't get any of that. That's crazy. I was like, yeah, well. The propaganda on mine was pretty intense, but my trip was about 1/3 people that were just there to party and knew nothing about being Jewish and were just like free trip, and it was about 1/3 like the self-loathings that like Palestinian sympathizers that were just like, this trip is fucked up, and then
Yep.
1/3 was like there to find a wife, woke up every day thinking about their identity, like serious kind of like religious, or either religious or like super into the community. And so, I kind of hung out with the self-loathers. And but you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. Um, it's a long, long story. It's a long, long story.
Real quick, the first time Preston and I ever spoke, first time ever, exchanged vocal words, you gave me advice on how to get laid in Israel by, you know what I'm talking about? You remember that? You remember that? You know what I'm talking
It
about?
sounds like something I would have said. I don't remember it,
That
but it
sounds like
sounds
I
that.
like
Sounds
me.
like that.
swear to God, I don't know if it's, what was it? What's it called? Maybe Phil might know. It's a kibbutz? Kibbutz?
Oh, the
Kibbutz.
kibbutz.
The kibbutz.
Maybe that's what it is. I don't know, but Preston was like, "Hey, if you want to get some Vagine, Bob and Vagine, you should go over here."
So the birthright Israel trip, a lot of them are hookup trips, like depending on which one you go
Yeah.
on. And so and because everyone knows like this is a hookup trip, like they're all in that mindset, and so there's a lot of hooking up.
All school trips kind of have that vibe when you go on them, and especially those Israel trips with the Hebrew. Like, I remember hearing the stories of the kids coming back, like in Hebrew school classes, talking about the hookups. It was all, those trips were all about the hookups and the partying when it came down to it, at least in the Hebrew schools.
But it even goes for Jew camp as well. Like, they say the same, like, because I've heard of like regular camp isn't that sexually charged, but everybody that comes back from like the Jewish camps are like, oh, I hooked up. And I was like, I think there's a culture of like, you're going off to the sexually primed like thing, be in that mindset. And everyone's in the mindset. And like people that go to regular camp are like, it was fine. Like,
by the way, Phil, completely random. Did you caught what I said earlier, right? About like, you know what I'm talking about? Like what I said earlier about like being a shithead when I was younger, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, you weren't that bad. You were just very blunt, and you'd say things to people that they weren't prepared to hear. And
no, you and Preston are both very kind on that.
No,
and
no,
I appreciate that,
dude,
but I was a shithead.
You were a shithead in certain situations, but in some situations, it was just how you said it. Like, I remember someone specifically, you sort of badmouthed them about their name. You're like, you just have a stupid name. You need to change your name. You didn't say it in a tactful way. You just said, you have a stupid name. You need to change your, like, things like that. But you meant good. You were trying to help that person grow their channel. You were always trying to help.
And also like what, like young Carmine was also like, you a lot of times you just had to talk yourself through it, and then you'd be like, oh right, like you'd be like, oh, that person's a total bitch, and then I'd be like, whoa, should you be using that word? And you'd be like, well, I don't know. Yeah, well, okay, maybe that word is a bit harsh. Maybe I shouldn't have been using that. Okay, you know, like it would be something like that. Like,
well, by the way, Phil, like I just want to show I didn't hate you. I just thought you were annoying. But then I met Nick, and then Nick's like, yeah, I found out about you. Nick Hodges, History Buffs. I found out about you because Phil the Issues guy was talking very nice about you, and I'm like, really? Huh, maybe Phil's a cool guy after all. It was very Trumpian of me, because you know how Trump does that? He'll talk shit about someone, and that person ends up talking nicely about him, and he's like, huh, he was a nice guy. I knew it all along. It was very Trumpian of me to do, and so cringe.
He's a very good person. But yeah, at the time, and I don't disagree with you about the short videos, but at the time you're like, okay, here's what you gotta do. Stop doing live videos altogether and make me 2 top 10 videos by the end of the week. Make me 2 top 10 videos by the end of the week.
God, that's so bad. So stupid, dumb of me. I'm sorry.
No. I did it, and those videos actually like they kept growing. They grow on my channel. You were smart. I could have been like that guy Minty and done like top 10 lists for the rest of my life. These stupid top 10 lists.
Do you know who Minty is? Preston Minty.
What's that?
You've probably heard of him before. He's the Burger King foot lettuce guy, right, Phil?
Yeah, something like that.
Burger King foot lettuce.
You've never heard of the Burger King foot lettuce guy? There's a guy. So this is for the audience too. If you ever want to be a YouTuber, do list videos. I don't know if they're popular anymore, but back in the day, list videos, easiest fucking way to get into YouTube. There was this guy Minty who did this list video, and he sounds so bored. And basically, I'm not exaggerating. This is how he said it. Number 5, Burger King foot lettuce.
How do you spell it? Minty?
Just search up Burger King foot lettuce. And it's like 15 seconds, and you'll hear it.
Oh my god.
Am I having a stroke with this Burger King foot lettuce?
It's just him standing on. It's just him standing on some lettuce.
No, that's not him, but he's just recounting the story.
Oh god. Okay. Well, all right. But I do remember those early days of list videos. Oh.
It's like 27 seconds. Like for the audience, it's 27 seconds. So
yeah.
Want to check it out? I'm sorry, Alex. You're talking about Robert.
But really quickly, why did Robert want Robin to be Tywin's ward? Sweet Robin. Robert was clueless at the beginning of the story, and Tywin wanted Sweet Robin because he kind of felt that this would ensure that Jon Arryn would always do his bidding, and Stannis wanted Sweet Robin as well, and was kind of talking to him like, I'll have him off safe here. And Jon Arryn, because Jon Arryn found out about the incest, was leaning towards Stannis, but like Robert was just trying to please his wife, who wanted to please her dad to get Sweet Robin over to Tywin. Little did they know that this like tug of war between Stannis and Tywin over the child would lead to Jon Arryn's murder, because Lysa did not want Sweet Robin taken from her, and I mean, no justification for murder, but a good reason that you'd not want Sweet Robin. Like, both of those dudes are dicks. You would not want either one of them like warding Sweet Robin. Though in the end, Sweet Robin would have probably married
Marcella, right? You think you probably would have?
Yeah, if he went to Tywin's side, it probably would have married Shireen if he went to Stannis' side, right? You know, so would have been love. Would have been love. The Sweet Robin would have got there and been like, "What's wrong with your face? Well, your face is ugly." Like, it's just
been, you should go out the moon door.
You can.
Push you at the moon door. Yeah, Marcella's a better situation for
this is a little bit like Carmine always like gets me, because there's this one moment where Carmine sometimes is like, yeah, so I was talking to this woman I met online, and you know she's really interested in me, and I'm like, has she seen your face?
No, the way this asshole says it, he said like I know how he. No, so the way he means it, because he knows I'm a private guy who doesn't go on cam. So, but of course I'm going on camera with these women. However, or I'm meeting them up in person. However, he's assuming that I'm not. So his first question is, the way he says it is so douchey. Like, has she seen your face? Has she seen your face, Carmine? Like, yes, thank you for that.
Don't you imagine when Preston, don't you imagine when Carmine goes out, he has the haunter mask on? Like,
mask on.
He walks around with the mask on.
He's like on the third date with her. They've already slept together like twice. He's like,
thank you.
He's like the Mandalorian. He's like, should I take off the mask? Can I take off?
Oh my God, the man. Oh, they're all banging. They're all banging with the helmets on.
He's like, if Mando can do it, I can do it. But have you ever seen Preston? Have you ever seen Carmine's face?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
See, I haven't. Yeah. You're probably the only one. I've never seen.
No, he's not the only one.
You just need to go on a date with him, and show him some booby pics, and
that'll do it.
What are you saying? Jesus! Don't listen to him, audience. He's insane.
You can email Carmine at theredteamerview@gmail.com.
Carmine, around 22 minutes into the stream, Preston goes on a rant about Varys' balls. Please clip that and make it into a short. Well, that's true. I do.
I second that.
Yeah. Varys has balls. Varys, like, it's not even a theory anymore, because I mean, enough time has gone by where I'm just like, no, of course Varys still has balls. This is ridiculous. There's no way they were cut off. But yeah, I'm sure that can be clipped. Preston, if you watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., it incorporates some fun time travel and some other sci-fi concepts in the later seasons. I watched some of it. My wife watched the whole thing. Maybe I'll have to ask her about it. But it was they keep bringing back some dead character, right? Because it turns out like Hydra is really just trying to like bring about their Antichrist to come back, and then comes back, and they use a dead actor.
Hail Hydra.
Yeah. You watched it all, Phil?
No, not really, but I recognize some of the mentions that there. I think it's in Endgame when Captain America's in the elevator with all of them and he goes, "Hail Hydra." I think that's sort of a slight reference to the series. I mean, they definitely put that stuff, and they kept bringing back that character of Coulson in the movies. But I never really got into the television series. I was more of a fan of the Netflix brief MCU universe that existed there, minus that the show that shall not be mentioned with Mr. Tyrell there. I think the rest of those were.
Was Tyrell's Fury really that bad of a show? I mean, I watched, by the way, all of Daredevil, all of Jessica Jones. Those were pretty good. And then
those are good.
Luke Cage. It's like Johnny Cage.
So many Nick Cage as Luke Cage.
Johnny Cage, Luke Cage show started out so good and then just all of a sudden became horrible. And I was like, ooh, I don't know if I want to keep watching.
Yeah, once a certain character was written up, the series sort of changed tempo a little bit, and the second season was all right. The Punisher series was good. And to answer your question, unfortunately, yes, the second season was a little bit better, but the first season of Iron Fist was really bad, and it was mainly because of him. He was specifically the worst part of the series. It wasn't written tremendously well, but as good as he was as Loras on Game of Thrones, I think he played that part extremely well as an amalgamation of the Tyrell's kids there. I think he did a good job in that role, but for whatever reason, he was just miscast as the Iron Fist or directed wrong, and that series, for me anyways, was like really kind of pretty bad.
How was Defenders? Was that worth it all?
If you're a fan of Jessica Jones and Daredevil, it has enough moments with two of them to make it worth it. But it almost plays as and Sigourney Weaver has an interesting part in it. Yeah, I'd say it's worth it if you like the other ones, but it's very much an Iron Fist centric story. They really were banking on the Iron Fist.
Kristen Ritter so much. Kristen Ritter is just
she's so perfect in that role too as Jessica Jones. Like the first season of Jessica Jones is one of the most perfect seasons of a TV show, just with Tennant as
performance.
Yeah, it's so good.
And she's so different than, I mean, she's great in Don't Trust the Bee and Apartment 23, but like she's Breaking so different. Too. You know, that's such a great show, by the way. If anyone's ever watched Don't Trust the Bee and Apartment 23, that's a fucking baller funny show.
She's also excellent on Breaking Bad in her brief stint on that show. But Jessica Jones just is the way she plays it, her drunk and her riffing, her verbal riffing on people. That's what's good about the Defenders, is hearing her rag on everyone else is probably the best part of the series, just because she's hitting home runs on each comment.
Fucking Kristen Ritter love. Why can't Bloodraven set up 1,000 Crasters and stop the other's invasion? Hint, Moon Meteor. The thing is, does he need 1,000 Crasters? That's the question. Is like, was one Craster enough? We don't know how many others there are. There might only be like 12, 20, 50. Yeah. You only need one Craster. Why would you need set up 1,000 Crasters? I think if there's 1,000 Crasters, the wildlings are gonna have some problems. Like, what the fuck is with all these fucking Crasters? Like, when there's one Craster, they can tolerate that. But like 1,000 Crasters, like, they'd be like, dude, what's going on? So I think it's just mainly that there wasn't necessarily the need for any more than one Craster, and what would the wildlings really accept? I think there's some super chat about here it is, smacking Shae the right thing. I forget when Shae is smacked, but no, like, Shae should not have been smacked or murdered. There's no justification for physical violence. I mean, the thing is, like, and this isn't even a sex gender thing. The funny thing about so when I was raised, they kind of tell you, like, oh, you can't hit girls. And so we were all like, the boys were all pretty violent to each other. And it's like, really, you shouldn't hit anybody. And you kind of realize that, like, all of the rules that we have for how we should treat women, like, is how you should treat anybody. Like, when people are like, oh, you should hold doors for women, you're like, shouldn't you just hold doors for everybody? Like, Like, what the fuck? Like, so you get to these points, you know, where and so yeah, no, there I can't remember when she was smacked or like when Joffrey was smacked and all of these things. None of these things were necessary. None of these things were necessary. Shae,
I would.
yeah, go ahead, Phil.
Oh no, I was just gonna say Joffrey would be the exception. I think smacking him was right.
I don't know if it helped. I don't know what.
No, it didn't. Could anything have helped Joffrey? Or is he just as I can't think of the quote? Is he just a bad seed? Veruca, she's just a bad seed. Was he just?
I think that's the implication. The implication is that he's the incest has screwed him up from the beginning. He was cutting open cats with and taking out fetal kittens and stuff from a young age, and there was no hope for him. There was no hope for him. And not to mention the fact that like he doesn't have a great dad or mom, so it's like you're screwed up from the beginning, and I almost hate how like George R. R. Martin double dips. Like, is Viserys fucked up because he's a Targaryen, or is he fucked up because he had a really bad raising and running from city to city? And it's like the answer is yes, and you're like, well, what? Like, what are we trying? What statement are you making then? That like we should be better to each other? Because it sounds like we can be better to each other, and it doesn't matter. Everyone's still gonna be fucked up.
Yeah. And you could even say, or maybe you could argue earlier on in the story that the way you could differentiate that was, well, Dany was a good person, but if you go by the way the show ends in her story, she ends not much different than the way you could imagine Viserys would in the similar situation. And I don't even know if what we've seen of him, he would go that far, if what we saw with show Daenerys and the way they drove her. So it even makes that even less clear of an answer of what you're asking.
I don't like any story that has someone be innately evil, except for maybe Halloween. Like the interesting thing, Halloween makes sense just because it's just like Michael Myers is just like mysterious and it's just always like a bad seed from the beginning. But like analyzing his backstory isn't that important, unless you believe in like. The cult of the thorn. Have you watched all the Halloween movies, Phil?
I lost track towards the end. I almost feel like I only really like the first few, but they all sort of blend. I'm more of a historian with the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, just because I thought Freddy was so fucking funny.
Yeah. But I mean, like Freddy, it's more interesting, right? That Freddy has such a screwed up upbringing.
Yes, but in later they downplay that upbringing. The more they made Freddy the fawns, the more they brought away from the fact that in the remake that they did, they made it not clear that was even true. But in the original, obviously, Freddy has problematic beginnings, and it's supposed to just be clear that he got off in a technicality and he did these things. But as time goes on, when he became the star of the show, they make him more of a crypt keeper kind of entertaining comedic character.
And I get it's largely by accident because they were writing Nightmare on Elm Street on the fly, and it was kind of lightning in a bottle, especially with the first movie. But like this idea that like there's such a statement about society, right? That like, he's this product of this violent upbringing, this violent genesis. And then the bureaucratic system like also like keeps things going. And then the vengeance system of like the parents, like there's a lot of statements about who is at fault, like and who's being sacrificed and hurt in the end, which is the children, right? So there's so many problems with the parents, and there's so many problems with society, and who is bearing the blame and the pain? It's the children, and that's an interesting statement. But if somebody's just crazy, then it's like, oh well, no one's to blame. Then what statement are we making? Nothing. I think Tyrion was going to meet Tysha, Sailor's wife, reject her for being a prostitute, turn his sights to Dany, but George changed it to the penny plot.
Where do, I wonder where whores go.
Yeah. A lot of people wonder about this, like about, so first off, like some people think that Penny is somehow secretly Tyrion's daughter and stuff like this, because like they're like, oh, Taisha's been mentioned so much. All of these plot threads of like Tyrion need to come together and like relate. And like you know, that would be a good way to like bring them together. Or in this situation, like, oh, maybe like this one's a little different because it's like he would meet Taisha, the sailor's wife, in Bravos, and then reject her for being a prostitute, and then turn her sights to Dany. See, I don't know. I think George's Tyrion story is more meandering and less focused than people think. Like I can buy focus and conspiracies with Dany's plot, with Jon's plot, with Brienne's plot, with a lot of plots. Theon's plot. I don't know if he really like was thinking things through with Tyrion. It's just so random. Every aspect of the A Dance with Dragons plot that it's just like you just fill in time. Like I wish the Widow of the Waterfront made sense, you know, and things like this. But it's just he's just writing stuff.
Do you think with the Tyrion thing, they were a victim of their own successes? Because leading up to that point, ultimately where he kills Tywin, it's such a great apex of the character that I was listening to a video that you guys did recently where you're talking about how with Tyrion's holding back the story, but in the sense that after that point, where can you really go with his character? They haven't, George or Dan and Dave, neither of them know what to do with Tyrion after he kills Tywin. He's just meandering around. There's nothing for him to do of substance.
I think he I agree with you that he blew his load there. Like,
yeah,
you know, I think Game of Thrones ruined it as well. Because at this point, prior to this point, yes, Tyrion was a major character, but he feels like the main character once you're watching Game of Thrones. Peter Dinklage, the show centers around him. So much time is centered around him. The show, when George put forward the show, he was the one person where you're like, he needs to be in the show. Anybody else, we'll cast them later, but it's got to be Peter Dinklage. And so George felt like he needed all of this like time dedicated to Tyrion. And so he's like inventing things for him to do, and there's nothing for him to do. Because you're right, like he had this exciting plot come to a climax, and then he's sitting around. I mean, he's traveling, but sitting around. They should have Theoned him. They should have like had him have no appearance in A Dance with Dragons, and everyone would have been like, "What? What's going on?" And then when Varys and then because he's not appearing, like maybe people could think he maybe is in the walls, like Cersei thinks. You know, maybe he. Maybe when Varys returns at the end of A Dance with Dragons, like everyone's like, maybe Tyrion is still around. Where's Tyrion? It would have been this like question. And then when you pick up like in the Winds of Winter, he could be in Slaver's Bay, and you can like retroactively talk about this like long journey or whatever. But
and it adds more depth to if you still have him be a drunk and you still do the same sort of things with him, you feel the passage of time that, oh my God, he's been like this for so long. So it feels more intense rather than that sudden snap to immediately being right back in Tyrion's head after that.
Yeah.
And it's just like that immediate reaction just because of that love affair that George has with the character of Tyrion.
Yeah. Now I do think that it does create a few problems where one, how do you introduce young Griff and Jon Con? But then again, should young Griff and Jon Con should they have been introduced?
Should they ever have happened? If we want this story to finish, Preston, should they have ever existed in the first place? Really?
I mean, I love the Jon Con chapters, I do, but you know, like when you're like, did this plot need to happen when we also had Ironborn and Dornish going on.
Isn't there enough? Isn't there enough?
Right. And then it's like, you also don't have the turnaround for bringing Jorah back. But again, like, was that necessary? Do we fucking need Jorah? Like, you know, I mean, granted, like, everybody knows I kind of hate Jorah, but, technically, some Protestant denominations disagree on literal transubstantiation interpretation by both Catholics. Yes, of course. I mean, there's no agreement on anything from Christians. Like, is Christ divine, or is he mortal, or is he simultaneously divine and mortal, or is he like separately divine and mortal? Like, oh my God, the things that they can argue about is insane. Have you ever like been driving across country, Carmine or Phil, and like turned on like you know when you're traveling across country and there's not many radio stations, and the only radio stations are like country rock and crazy fucking preacher channel.
Yep.
And you're listening to crazy preacher channel, and it's like, oh my God, what the fuck are you talking about? Like,
where am I?
Like, he's like, and this is the pre-incarnate Christ. Like, and when you're reading like Exodus 4 and the pre-incarnate Christ, and you're like, what the fuck are you talking about? Pre-incarnate, like the crazy fucking bonkers shit. Like, you think we're bonkers with Ice and Fire. Like, imagine it's the Bible. It's your whole life. Because, you know, there must be like a pre-incarnate Christ. Like, what?
The Bible, the original tinfoil.
Oh my God.
But I mean, right down to the way the cross looks. Like, they, you know, certain sects argue about how the cross looks. Is Jesus on the cross? Is Jesus not on the cross? Do you want to see the rippling abs? Do you not want to see the rippling abs?
Yeah.
Right down to those things. But with the buddy Christ dogma.
JC was on one of those like Chris Evans diets, you know, where he's just got fucking ripped. Nothing but chicken and broccoli.
Jesus Christ, superstar. Oh my God.
D&D had Sam suggest democracy in the last episode. You think George would try something like that in A Song of Ice and Fire? What is the alternative to feudalism in Westeros? I definitely thought this for a long time. And I really thought that Ice and Fire was making some Plato's Republic like statements about like about the future of government and things like this. And George denied it when I asked him about it, but I don't know. It because of C.S. Lewis and C.S. Lewis based writing off of Plato's Republic. This is a running theme and element in fantasy stuff in general. So maybe, I don't know, it's bled in some way. Like, but it does seem like there needs to be some sort of like big change. And the way the show ended seemed George-ish with regards to like, you know, at least having an elected king being a step up from monarchy. Because clearly the show is against monarchy. You know, clearly the show thinks divine right is the dumbest system in the world, and that we need to move beyond this. This is the number one criticism of like R plus A equals J, John sits the Iron Throne, is Ice and Fire is clearly a criticism of divine right and like parentage deciding shit. So like, I do think like something like that, like some step towards democracy would help. George has a story called Windhaven, where this is a major plot, and a lot of Windhaven is in Ice and Fire. For instance, the Eyrie is from Windhaven, and so is Sorella Sand. A lot of different things like appear in that story. And so the Great Councils appear in that story. So at the end, they have a great council where they reform the plot of the story is that it's this post-apocalyptic world where their spaceship landed and crashed, or they're well beyond, and the solar sail of their spaceship no longer functions like as like planetary craft, but now they use the pieces of the solar sail to fly between islands because it's a very windy world. And so the only communication between the islands are these people that are able to fly on these solar sails. And there's the solar sails are passed down, in families, and who gets to ride them. And so the main character, Maris, in case you're wondering where like Pretty Maris comes from and things like this, it's from this story, that name Maris. Maris finds a crashed guy who dies, and she begins to fly with the wings. And they kind of say, well, wait a minute. Like eventually they find out, and they're like, well, your family doesn't own these wings. They need to be like handed over. And she's like, shouldn't we have a system where it's a meritocracy, where the best flyers can like go? And so we should have competitions where we like determine through competition who gets to be a flyer and stuff like this. And so they have like, it's about having great councils and having political changes happen to the world, and what is a better system. And so yeah, the fact that like great councils come from that story, and that story has a political change in the end, makes me think that, yeah, Ice and Fire would make some sort of like political change like that in the end. That George definitely believed that meritocracy is superior to heredity.
Someone in the live chat sort of connected a thought. Like it made me think when you're saying solar sails, Deep Space Nine in a season 3 episode when Cisco and Jake, Mark Boyd in the live chat said Deep Space Nine had solar sails. Yeah, I was trying to think where I've heard that before. I wonder if they took it from George's story in the season 3 episode of Deep Space Nine. Jake and Cisco got trapped and they had to use solar sails on an old spaceship to get back to the station.
Oh, yeah. I mean, maybe this was written in the 70s.
Yeah, that was in the 90s, so I wouldn't be surprised if they sort of were influenced by that.
Let's see how far. Oh man, so many discussions.
Oh my god.
It's like want to hear you on parasocial relationships. Last week, Red Team said, "Look, dude, I don't know you. We all know you, but you don't know us. Weird." Paris, like there is I saw an interesting article about PewDiePie. Like this is years ago when PewDiePie was king, right? And like why PewDiePie was so important and revolutionary. And today I'd say like why Hassan Piker is like so important today, right? And why like video game Let's Plays are so popular. Mm-hmm. And when you watch PewDiePie, despite the fact that like he has millions and millions of viewers, he feels like your bro, that you're just like hanging out with your bro. And that's how you would talk to your bro. Or like a video game Let's Play, it feels like you're just hanging out with your bro.
Yep.
And it's an interesting like feeling. Now this isn't like new. I know a lot of people that like they watch Happy Days and like, oh, when Happy Days ended, I felt it was like my kids like growing up and leaving me. And you're like, yeah,
or watching a show like Mystery Science Theater 3000 and ragging on it with them and being like, oh, I'm sitting there with those guys ragging on it. You feel that to a certain extent in those kind of things, or teen dramas, I think rely on that. You feeling like you're one of those characters when you were in high school dealing with similar dramas.
Yeah. So there is a lot of that. There's a lot of odd. I mean, it's always existed, but it's so odd and weird and explicit now. The parasocial aspects to everything today, yeah. I mean, it's like I'm able to deal with it pretty well because like my life is so utterly divorced from this. Like I live in Taiwan. You guys, like hardly any of you guys do. I know Rachel does, but she's got to go.
Preston or Carmine, have you guys ever met anybody from like fans of your channel, like people in real life,
Yes.
in person?
Yes. Yeah, I mean,
Not.
I've run into people on the street and like in different environments. Yeah.
We have both met people in different ways. Preston will meet people randomly. For me, it'll be like meticulous planning.
You're always meticulously planning. Kaiser says it.
Well, if you know, catch my meaning. To give context to what Jeffrey is saying, the reason I say I don't know you is because the gentleman who asked the super chat last week was asking if he could come on, and I don't know if that person is a shithead douchebag who's going to come on here and just yell racial slurs to try to get the video demonetized. You know what I'm saying?
Like me.
So I don't know you. Um, yeah, and I wouldn't want that on my stream, and I don't think Preston wants that on his stream.
Yeah, I mean, you know, he could be that he could also be the greatest person in the world, but yeah, there's just the risk of like, you know, you're opening your door to a stranger, you know, in a sense. And so there's always the risk. It's very funny, but yeah, I mean, yeah, I went to a con once, and obviously I ran into a lot of people that knew me there. But like, there's definitely been like times in my life where I've been like hanging in it with a group of people, and somebody's like, "Wait a minute, you're Preston Jacobs? I watched your videos." Like that's happened to me a bunch of times. Um, and you know, the that just, I don't know, that kind of weird stuff. I mean, it's never been bad. I've never had a bad experience. Like most people are pretty chill. They're like, "Oh, I watch your videos. Okay, cool." You know, and then that's it. Um, oh, you great stuff. I really like it. And then that's it. So I've never had a bad relation. I've never had a bad situation, but it's easier for me to because I don't live in America, so I'm not. Taiwanese people are Taiwanese people are never stopping me in the street and being like, "It's Preston Jacobs. I hear your voice."
Oh my god, I love your What I Missed series. It's so good.
Is there any character, main or secondary, in the books that you have a complete 180 in terms of opinion, love, hate, vice versa? Tyrion and A Dance with Dragons. I think Tyrion, I definitely like over time grew to dislike more his A Dance with Dragons story. Brienne, I grew to love more.
Yeah.
Over time. The some of them have been kind of like cyclical. I think I started out not liking Dany's A Dance with Dragons, and then I liked it. I started off being kind of neutral on John's A Dance with Dragons, and then kind of ended up liking it in the end. It does change. Certain ones I've just liked more and more. Like I've gotten to really love Asha more. I like Theon more and more, Quentin more and more. The only one that's kind of gone down for me is Tyrion. Like, digging into it and finding that there's nothing there. Like, thinking that something must be there and then digging and being like, oh, it's less than what I thought. That sucks. More of them are
I'm loving your Tyrion.
But most of them I find out more and more, and I like them more and more. So. When is suicide ethical? Asking for a friend. Oof, that's a deep question. That's a deep one. I mean, I think like if you're old and in pain and
or terminal.
And terminal and that kind of thing. If you don't have any friends and family, like the problem is that like as a human being, you do exist to you do have value to other people, and you are hurting other people by taking yourself out of the situation. Like, it's funny because like I remember years ago asking, I taught in China when I was 23 years old as an English teacher. And I remember asking the kids there, and every single student was like very vehemently like against suicide, like saying like it is wrong, it is like morally wrong, because of what it would do to your parents. Like every single one of them, that was the reason, you know. Like you have a responsibility to them, and you'd be like you'd be hurting them so much, you know. So I don't know. Oof.
Yeah, it's a tricky subject.
That's a very tricky subject. I would say that, but generally speaking, I think like suicide is something. Depression is something that you can get through, and with you know, on a small level, you know, if you're feeling depressed, I think you can improve your situation by eating better and exercising and getting outside and going for walks and talking to people. But if you're on a suicidal level, that's obviously something that's probably more medical, and that you need to, you know, go and get some medical treatment and some
or talk to somebody.
Yeah, talk to somebody. Some pharmaceuticals, probably. You know. Hi Preston. Thanks for being awesome. Being a needed voice of reason. Great for the Song of Ice and Fire work and building a great community. Thank you. I appreciate it. One more thing on Ukraine. A lot of military gear handed over was scheduled for disposal, which costs money. So the U.S. is saving taxpayer money even. I don't... So... U.S. disposal of stuff, like disposal of weapons, is very expensive. You have to dismantle stuff. So we have something called ITAR, which is the essentially like there's it's not classified necessarily, but it's like there's a certain level of like technology in military equipment that we don't want falling into other people's hands, or is proprietary, or is copyrighted, like only a certain company can use it. So like it's very, very expensive to like dispose of stuff. And so you're right that handing it over to somebody else and putting off like disposing of it can save you money. It's weird stuff. Like it could be cheaper to actually like give it away than to deal with it yourself. I mean, I guess much like with like yard sales.
A couch. Yeah, like a couch that you just leave out on the side of the street instead of worrying about selling it on Craigslist Marketplace.
Yeah, there's a lot of that.
Let's just leave these bombs over here.
In my work, I mean, as an auditor, my work, like there's a lot of just like random equipment left in various places that people are just like bureaucratically can't deal with or don't want to deal with, or just like, my tour is done in a few months, let the next person deal with this. So yeah, you know, that's I didn't even make this one big, but
that's what she said. No.
Yeah, I know.
Sorry, no. That was bad. I couldn't help myself.
Yeah. So it's but like I say, like, you know, like money is so odd because you know it keeps what does it mean? Like, is a dollar really a dollar when it's the government spending a dollar? You know, is it how real is it? Because if it's being spent to give an American a job, like that kind of stuff, is it really aid? And all these different issues that we talked about last time. This was David Julian from last week. He's like, I'm not a shithead douchebag who's gonna say racial slurs. I promise.
Carmine, asshole.
I know. But he put the smiley face. So.
Yeah, that makes everything better at the end. It does.
Letter in A1 in 13 AC, which sent him to DS and yield eternal peace. Ones he'd care about. One he's care about are in King's Landing, Viserys, Orys, Infant Maegor, likely with his mother. Aenys' mother died in 10 AC, and then with his father, not alone on Dragonstone. Okay. Okay. Oh, okay. Now I've got it. Letter to Aegon the First in 13 after conquest, which sent him to Dragonstone and yield eternal peace. One, he'd care about our in King's Landing, Viserys, Orys, infant Maegor, likely with his mother. Aenys' mother died 10 AC. Then with his father, not alone. I think so. So this is. I think this is referring to there is a war between Aegon and Dorne, and at some point, Aegon receives a mysterious letter from Dorne, and after that, Aegon just stops the war, and everybody's like, "What is that letter?" I think the hint with the letter is really that they have Rhaenys imprisoned, and that she didn't die, and that I think that might be it. I mean, it says that like mother died in 10 AC, but that's the thing is like, no, she's not actually dead. They have her imprisoned, or at least whether it's true or not, they're sending a letter to Aegon saying maybe we do, and you need to stop because we're just torturing her or something, and so he stopped in the end. That might be it. I think that's like one of the possibilities that George is definitely hinting at is that Rhaenys didn't die. Other than that, it's probably a J.J. Abrams mystery box. Mystery box.
JJ. It's the numbers. It's the numbers. It's the numbers. 1852, 62. Hawkeye wrote the pink letter. Maybe Mark. He's a.
Bonero jabbed a finger at the moon, made a fist, spread his hands wide. When his voice rose in crescendo, flames swept from his fingers with a sudden whoosh and made the crowd gasp. Yes, so this is I think what Ross is getting at is that whether or not certain magic in the Ice and Fire happens, or whether one can like figure this out. Like, is Bonero just shooting out some sort of weird powder or gasoline or something to create that fire, or does he actually have abilities to telekinetically control flame? Phil, what is your opinion on the level of magic in the story? Are you on like my extreme position that there's very little, or are you on that there's probably a little bit more magic than that, or a lot of magic?
It seems to me the world works the best when there's as little magic as possible. I think the more you introduce magic, the more you get into a different kind of fantasy. I think the magic ends in the way that everything that the dragons are magic, in the way that they were a creature that existed in a time before and then they were rebirthed. There is some blood magic involved with Daenerys and that kind of thing altogether. But for the most part, I'm more towards your perspective that there's minimal magic, that it's more science type things that are looked at in a different way. I mean, even glass candles, to a sense, you can look at it as a science of some sort.
Yeah. So Bonero, he probably has some sort of like web shooters or something, or like where he like is able to like flamethrower web shooters.
He's like pyro or something like that.
Right. I'm just thinking like how, like, he's got some sort of like pump with a flammable material here. I'm just wondering if that could be like easily done. Like if you have like a balloon.
Wildfire, could he have a sprayable wildfire of some sort that he's igniting somehow? He's figured out how to do a lighter type of situation where he just sparks something and then has the wildfire shoot out.
Or it's just powder and he just goes, it's got
magnesium.
They don't really say how high it is, if it's like flamethrower. Oh,
he's Fire Spider-Man, Count Balerion.
Yeah. So because I'm gonna have to wrap up soon because my kids are sick and I'm leaving a lot of things on my teleworking wife right now. But Carmine, any last discussions before we go? I know this is a relatively short live stream for me. Only 2.5 hours.
I have a very basic question for both of you. I was doing a stream on like HBO tier lists of like where you would put the main series, like The Sopranos, The Wire, S tier kind of episodes. Where would you rank Game of Thrones on that list as a television series, with the first half being so positive and the second half not being as even? How would you rank from S to like F? Where would you have to put Game of Thrones as a whole on the series compared to other HBO television series? Carmine and Preston.
Carmine, do you want me to go first, or do you want to go first?
I'm glad you brought up the HBO because I wanted to talk to you about. I wanted to briefly say something about Sopranos, but had Game of Thrones stuck the landing like S, highest tier, but because it didn't, the last 3 seasons sucked for me. I mean, I shouldn't say they sucked. Season 8 sucked. Season 6 and 7 were B plus for Game of Thrones.
I settled on like between B and A. That's where I ended up settling around there.
Yeah, it's a difficult question because on the one hand, there's like HBO represents like good drama and like good stories, and there's a lot of like great HBO shows that are fantastic stories that aren't exactly huge budget things, and then but Game of Thrones is a fucking spectacle, right? It was a societal mega thing that the entire zeitgeist like revolved around and everyone talked about, but then was a really bad story. Right? Like there was some incredible fight scenes and incredible battles and all sorts of stuff that like, if somebody asked me like, should I watch it? I'd be like, yeah, you have to watch it, even though it's not good. Like it's so weird, So I was talking with Carmine about my hatred of Return of the Jedi yesterday.
Is it the Ewoks?
It's everything. I have a laundry list of everything I hate about Return of the Jedi. I hate the movie.
There's a lot, especially when you hear about the potential of the original film. There's a couple of videos that unpack that. I think Bullets and Blockbusters or something like that, like unpacks that good, like what could have been the original ideas for Return of the Jedi, and it sounds much better. I only like a few elements of it. I'm not the biggest fan, but it's
So my problem with Return of the Jedi, and I mean it just real quickly, because people have heard me rant on this before, but like,
oh no, go.
It's fundamentally it's the same plot as the first movie, so you're fucking being lazy as shit, like just lazy, okay? And then you're beginning the movie with all of a sudden Luke being this master Jedi that he was not at the end of the last movie, and he becomes a master Jedi by himself off screen, which is just dumb. Then you've got the Jabba plan, which is the dumbest, like makes no sense at all. Like it's not even a convoluted plan. It's nothing. It's how is having Chewbacca and the droids be prisoners, and then having Lando in that outfit, and then having Leia be a prisoner, and then you going in and becoming a prisoner. Like, how is that a plan? Like, what's the plan?
Why didn't he just go in swinging if he was just going to swing and kill everybody anyway with the lightsaber?
If you knew you were going to slaughter all these innocent people, why didn't you just do that to start?
Just start.
Like, it's the dumbest thing ever. Like the whole beginning of getting Han back, it's just horrible. Then you jump to Ewoks, and honestly, some horrible green screens of like the worst green screen of the series. Like them on those motorbikes are horrible. And the fact that Luke is Leia's twin is the most contrived bullshit to remove one of the best conflicts in the whole story, the love triangle. Okay? The first movie, you've set up sexual tension between Luke and Leia. Second story, you've established a relationship between Leia and Han. What's gonna happen? Oh, actually nothing. They're brother and sister. No problem.
I know.
Like fuck.
And Leia just goes, I know. I've always known. So why did you kiss him if you always knew? George had a plan. It rhymes. It's like
Yeah,
poetry. It
yeah.
rhymes.
And then you get to and then people are like, well, what about like the battle between Luke and Vader? Isn't that awesome? And I'm like,
The other one's better.
the Empire one is better. Oh yeah,
The Empire one's better. Yeah.
Oh my god, it's so much better. Empire one's so much better. But also like, it doesn't make any sense that Luke would be all of a sudden fighting Vader. Also, I fucking don't like the Emperor. I understand that everybody has this nostalgia. Isn't it so great that, like, you know, the performance, it's so over the top? Yeah, it's fucking over the top, campy, like, Bond villain crap. Like, who would ever fall for that? Who in what world, when someone's like, yes, give in to your hatred, would someone give in to their hatred? At that point, you're like, oh, thank you. Like, I was about to give in to my hatred, and then you act like a fucking tool and reminded me that I need to stop doing that. Like, he's so over the top ridiculous, the Emperor. And then, like, Vader's redemption doesn't make any sense either. Like, I'm not going to give in to the dark side, but my dad is, but he's going to realize he fucking hates the Emperor, kill him, and then that's going to be somehow him coming back to the good side of the Force. How? Like, on every level, the movie falls apart for me. It's so bad.
Preston, it gets even worse when you factor in the sequel series. When the Emperor comes back, it just makes it so useless. Like, what did Vader do? He didn't do anything.
He didn't do anything. He didn't do anything. Your redemption was killing my clone.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. That's all he did.
Now look. Rise of Skywalker is a worse movie. The Phantom Menace is a worse movie. I will grant that those are worse movies. But Return of the Jedi is horrible. Now, bringing this back to the question. It's all coming back.
Oh wait, there's a question. Wait.
There was a question. If someone watched the first two Star Wars movies, which are incredible, and said, like, should I watch Return of the Jedi? And how are you going to rank, like, Star Wars as a trilogy? I'd be like,
the original trilogy.
I'd be like, yeah, you have to watch it, and you have to consider the original trilogy like a really fucking great show, or a really great movie series, despite the fact that the Return of the Jedi is horrible. So that's where I am with Game of Thrones. Like, the start of Game of Thrones is incredible. It's an incredible show, those first 3 seasons. Yep. And it was you need to see the rest because you need to see the story resolve. And it was like a big, important part of culture, but it's horrible. It's Return of the...
What's amazing in what you said is that, talking about the big spectacle and all those big battles that were really great, what made the early seasons awesome, they didn't have a lot of those moments. I mean, there was the Battle of the Blackwater, but that was Jaime and Ned's fight in the first season, where it was, if you watch it, it's more of an early lightsaber fight where you're more concentrating on their faces and their reactions, and action more served the plot. I think if we just look at basics, the second half of the series, even though it had a lot of spectacle, forgot about what was successful about the first half of the series, which was the more scaled down stuff. And
I mean, it's amazing that they actually cut the one battle from a Game of Thrones is the Green Fork, and they cut it. They have Tyrion get knocked out and miss the whole thing, and we were kind of fine with that.
Yeah. Because everything else was so good. Or like with Rob just showing up, I won. I defeated the Lannisters are gone. I beat them all. Okay, I believe you. You know, like,
yeah, all the battles could have happened off screen, and it would have been fine.
If they had kept the writing good. So what would your final ranking of Game of Thrones be if you had to put it on that scale?
I mean, I would put it as I guess I'd be with Carmine, put it like some sort of B+, A- kind of situation, despite the fact that like the last four seasons 4, 5, I even think season 4 shows serious cracks, but I think seasons 5, 6, 7, and 8 are pretty bad, but seasons 1 to 3 are so good. It's like Return of the Jedi is so bad, but Empire Strikes Back is so good. Like, what do you fucking do with that? What do you do with that?
I don't know. I liked Return of the Jedi. I thought it was okay. Look at his face. Disappointed. Phil, I know you like Sopranos, right? And I had this very controversial take on Sopranos.
Hmm.
And I recently watched the whole thing, start to finish. But I skipped a lot of the scenes that were superfluous. It was necessary. They mean nothing. Like all the stuff with Meadow, all the stuff with AJ, some of the side characters were fucking useless. Like I would argue Paulie and his mom at the retirement home. That was kind of pointless to me. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Yeah.
Where do you stand on me doing that? Because once again, I'm more interested in what's going on with Tony. Even some of the Dr. Melfi scenes, like I don't care about Dr. Melfi outside of the therapist office, and they show a lot of like her private stuff, which I don't
Right.
care about.
It's like
Her son having dinner with her.
Breaking Bad's shoplifting a plot line, like stuff that didn't go
Right, right.
anywhere.
I skipped a lot of it because it like Meadow in college and that friend that Meadow has, the blonde one, bitching
Oh, the
about
one that's pulling out her own hair and shit.
Yeah, that has nothing to do with any of the gangster shit, which is what I'm here for. The ridiculous gangster shit. So where do you stand on that? Me skipping stuff. Where do you stand on that?
I mean, I understand, especially the way the series is set up now, where you look back on it, there's a lot of meandering around because part of the problem with The Sopranos, and I love The Sopranos, I think it's one of the best, especially the Christopher and Tony and Junior and all of that kind of stuff is really well done. The only part I might argue with the Paulie stuff with his mother is pretty hilarious when he like ends up robbing her friend and a lot of and like hitting her and the mother hits him with the car. But anyways, I feel like a lot of the extra stuff, the narrative of The Sopranos isn't its strong suit. It doesn't have a strong narrative from beginning to end. So there's a lot of useless stuff like that I don't blame you necessarily for skipping. But it depends. I think the best stuff on that show is the Tony stuff and is the mob stuff. But I kind of understand your perspective with that, especially now, where I think if that show was made now, there'd be even more focus on just Tony and Christopher, and a little less focus on everything else. But so I don't blame you, Carmine. Did you enjoy the series other than that?
Uh, like I said, AJ's bullshit and his stupid storylines, and Meadow's bullshit and her stupid storylines aside, yeah, it was pretty good. It was fucking hilarious in a dark way. Like
Yep.
the one scene. I'm sorry, President. I know you have to go. One scene where they're at dinner and Paulie and Christopher are fighting, and then they leave, and the waiter's like, "There's no tip. That's all you giving him as a tip?" And then they kill the guy,
They
and
end up
then they
killing the
run
dude.
away. And Paulie grabs the money, and Christopher goes, "That's my money, Paulie." And then they make up the next day and go, "Look, we got to stop doing this to each other. Yeah, we're friends. Like, yeah, someone could have gotten hurt." I'm like, "Are you serious? Are you
I guess that would
serious?
be the
Jesus."
one argument I would have for you, Carmine, is that what makes The Sopranos great isn't necessarily always the storyline. It is sometimes those mundane things with the characters. That being said, I don't blame you for skipping Meadow and AJ scenes. They're infurious. I think my favorite AJ scene is when he tries to drown himself in the pool, but he doesn't account for like being the water not being deep enough, and he's like half hanging out of the water with a bag on his. It's not funny because but in the context of the series, it is. And Tony's just like, "You're an idiot. You're a fucking idiot." But
I love Phil Leotardo. He's like the best. Oh my
yeah,
God, Why are you dressed like that? You look like a Puerto Rican whore. Make me sick. I fucking love stupid shit like that. And little
good stuff.
Carmine, oh my God, little Carmine. Just
He's an
there's the
idiot.
running gag where like people around Tony just wants everything to be chill and cool, and people around Tony just keep talking way too fucking much, and then just ruining the piece that he just made. You know, like when they're trying to like get Phil to calm down, and little Carmine keeps going and going and going, and then Phil just fucking flips, and Tony's like, "Come on!" I love that running gag. Great show. It's a great show. It's
The
just
fact that Phil and Carmine are having a discussion about Phil and Carmine is very odd.
Oh yeah, that's weird. That is very fucking weird. I didn't even think about that. That's very true. That's good.
Anyway, I have to go, but this is my
That's
last
good.
one.
That's
Who
good.
is the best living actor, and why is it Denzel? I mean, don't we know it's Daniel Day-Lewis? How can
I
anyone
was
not?
just about to say
How
Daniel
can it
Day.
not be Daniel Day-Lewis or
I'll
Meryl
give you
Streep?
Denzel, best black actor, best female black actor, Viola Davis.
Gary Oldman would also be on that list. Gary Oldman's a very good actor with changes, but Daniel Day-Lewis is probably the answer.
Yeah, I'd say Daniel Day-Lewis or Meryl Streep would probably be my two. Would be the best that are still living right now. But yeah, we'll see. Have they ever been in a movie together? Meryl Streep and Daniel Day-Lewis. They need to be
Probably.
That'd be
Probably, yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Oscar bait. It's just that movie's just Oscar bait. Fuck that movie. Yeah. Fucking Oscar bait.
Anyway, thank you, Carmine. Thank you, Phil, for joining me.
Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
And anytime, man. And I'm gonna go deal with some sick kids. But bye, everybody. See you guys next time.